Chapter 1308. Actually, there's something we want to discuss with you. With that said, White Yiksha placed a letter on the table, exposing the contents of the letter to Noah, 16 Nights Reversal, and Ren. The three of them subconsciously looked at the letter on the table. There was only one sentence written on the letter. A demon king will attack the fire dragon's birth ceremony. When this sentence was imprinted in Noah and 16 Nights' eyes, their pupils constricted at the same time. Demon king? A demon king will attack the fire dragon's birth ceremony? This. Ren's eyes widened, and he started to panic. No. It can't be, right? A demon king will attack the fire dragon's birth ceremony? Calm down, young Master Tiny. 16 Nights Reversal pressed down on Ren's shoulder, but his gaze turned sharp as he swept his gaze towards White Yiksha. This shouldn't be a joke, right? If anyone uses this kind of joke on me, I'll definitely let them know that they can't make any kind of joke. White Yiksha met 16 Nights' gaze. I think you guys are the same, right? What's going on? Noah asked directly. Is this letter a premonition of a crime? No, this letter is a prophecy made by Thousand Eyes, an officer who has the gift of seeing the future. White Yiksha closed his eyes gently as he fanned himself with the paper fan in his hand. The reliability of the prophecy is almost 100%. At least, it hasn't been wrong so far. So, I have to tell you that this is definitely not a joke. I see, Noah said calmly. So, as the ruler of the strongest class, you came to the North District to hold the festival together with Salamandra? No, I'll help with the birth ceremony this time. The main reason is that the other rulers in the Northern District aren't cooperating with Shidora's birth ceremony at all. As a result, as the ruler of the Eastern District, it's my turn to be the co-host, White Yiksha said in a bitter tone. So, if you're wondering if there's a secret behind why the North and East District will hold the ceremony together, you'll probably be disappointed. It's only because the other rulers in the North District won't cooperate that it's my turn. Noah was instantly speechless. Not to mention Noah, even 16 Nights looked as if she had eaten a fly. Her face was full of bitterness. In the end, he guessed a lot of reasons, but he didn't expect the reason to be so simple. Was this the so-called being too smart for your own good? However, this way, the reason why White Yiksha sent an invitation letter to No Name was clear. This was because the mission of No Name, which had lost its flag and name, was to defeat the Demon King. It was because of this reason that when Noah exposed the purpose of White Yiksha's invitation in the operation headquarters of the Fire Dragon birth ceremony, White Yiksha said, if I can't guess something of this level, then I won't be able to use defeat the Demon King as the mission of the community. In other words, the reason you sent us the invitation letter is to let us take the Demon King's head? 16 Nights had a ferocious warrior expression on his face. How despicable. Did things become so interesting? Reverse 16 Nights didn't have the slightest bit of interest in political disputes. However, if he played a game of bestowment with the Demon King, it would ignite 16 Nights' fighting spirit more than anything else. The problematic child, who longed to be moved and entertained, let out an aura as if he was looking for an opponent, telling everyone present. At this moment, 16 Nights was in a very good mood. However, 16 Nights' good mood caused the person who was in the worst mood to explode. If you want to play, then go back to your territory to play. Mandela shouted angrily. Unlike you nameless people who raise the slogan, down with the Demon King, as if it's a game, once we lose in front of the Demon King, don't you know what kind of price we will have to pay? You will be destroyed by the Demon King. Ren's expression stiffened slightly, and then became gloomy. Yes. The Demon King's attack wasn't a game. Once they lost in the game with the Demon King, then the tragic situation in No Name's base might happen to Salamandra. Mandela clearly understood this point. When 16 Nights was so excited because of the appearance of the Demon King, it was natural that Mandela would be furious. However, in response to this, 16 Nights looked straight at Mandela with an unruly expression. What? Was the famous Salamandra afraid? When the time comes, just obediently hide behind us and be protected by us. You. What did you say? Mandela was furious, and one of his hands reached for the hilt of the long sword at his waist. Brother Mandela. Shadora was shocked and hurriedly tried to stop him. At this moment, a cold sense of oppression enveloped Mandela. Mandela's hand froze, and his whole body stiffened as if he was touched by something cold. He raised his head abruptly and looked in the direction of the cold sense of oppression. There, Noah looked at Mandela with an unusually calm gaze and said slowly, "Don't worry, Mandela. This time, I won't be merciful. If you're prepared to risk your life, then draw your sword." Mandela only felt suffocated, and his expression turned ugly. One of his hands couldn't move at all, and he couldn't reach for the hilt of the sword that was not far away. "You should give me the same, Mandela." White Yiksha's brows furrowed. "You're the ones who need help. Is this the tone you use to ask for help? We're dealing with the Demon King." Mandela's expression kept changing as he stared at Noah and the others. Can a group of a no-name really help us defeat the Demon King? Oh. 16 Knights Reversal grinned with interest. In other words, are you going to test our abilities? I won't stop you, Mandela. White Yiksha glanced at Mandela. But I have to tell you, those two over there, one has a gift that even the so-called omniscient Laplace couldn't identify, and the other has more than 1,000 types of divine armament. If you think there's a way to test their abilities, then I'm looking forward to it. A gift that even Laplace couldn't identify? Mandela's eyes widened. More than 1,000 types of divine armament? Shadora was even more shocked. Impossible. Mandela shouted. Let's not talk about the former for now. How is it possible to have 1,000 types of divine armament? It should be known that divine armament bestowed with divine armament was a mythical item with terrifying power. It was like a godly gun that left the opponent with nowhere to run, a gun that would never miss a single shot. Gungnir. It was like the divine spear of victory that, once thrown, would definitely lead the result to victory, the Brahmastra spear. It was like a cursed divine spear that could reverse cause and effect and definitely hit the heart, the spear of piercing death, Gibalg. These terrifying divine armament bestowed with divine armament were terrifying existences that even the 3 strongest types of boxers couldn't ignore. And these divine armament bestowed with divine armament were almost all in the hands of the highest level Asura gods and Buddhas. The rest of the people only had imitations of divine armament. Those who had the real thing, which one of them wasn't a famous person in boxers? Noah had more than 1,000 types of divine armament bestowed like this? There should be a limit to joking, right? However, this was also the reason why White Yiksha, who was once a 2-digit demon king, was so shocked. If he only had 1 or 2, it wouldn't be so shocking. However, if there were more than 1,000 types, that would be too ridiculous. Anyway, I won't believe it. Mandela stared at Noah. Unless you can show it to me. Chapter 1309. Unless you can take it out and show it to me. The moment he said that, the entire space fell into a strange silence. Everyone present turned their gaze to Noah. They did not even dare to blink, worried that they would miss something. This included White Yiksha and 16 Knights, who had personally witnessed Noah using the Gate of Babylon to project thousands of treasures in the most extravagant way to vent his anger. That was the same for White Yiksha and 16 Knights. Among them, Ren even looked at Noah with some anticipation and nervousness. After all, the last time Noah fought Arjul, Ren was unable to rush to the scene before Noah finished off Luos and Arjul because of his leg strength. After that, when he heard that Noah had at least 1,000 types of Godhead bestowment armaments, Ren was like Mandela now. He could not believe it no matter what. Later on, during the month-long community activities, whenever the community encountered some difficulties, Noah was always able to take out items with magical effects to help the community overcome the difficulties. This made Ren gradually become skeptical. Now, it was the time to witness Noah's heritage. Under such circumstances, Noah frowned slightly. He looked up slightly and looked at Mandela without saying a word. What's wrong? Mandela was still staring at Noah. There was no mockery or contempt in his expression. There was only probing. You can't take it out? Can't take it out? It could only be said that this was a joke. Even the hero King Gilgamesh had thousands of prototypes of treasures, let alone Noah, who had more treasures than the hero King Gilgamesh. After all, the treasures in the hero King Gilgamesh's Gate of Babylon were only prototypes at best. Noah's Gate of Babylon had treasures that could exist in the form of weapons and items. In ancient times, the establishment of various mythological systems was based on reference, so the contents of many mythological systems were basically the same. Under such circumstances, each prototype of treasures would give birth to 2 or 3 types of treasures, which were owned by famous figures in various mythological systems. In this way, all the noble phantoms that could exist in the form of weapons and tools would be stored in Noah's Gate of Babylon. The number of noble phantoms alone had reached tens of thousands. Now, everyone was asking Noah to take out thousands of treasures? It couldn't be any simpler. However, before that, there was one thing that Noah needed to confirm. What about the reward? Noah met Mandela's gaze. If we help you defeat the Demon King, what kind of reward will we get? Hearing this, Mandela was stunned at first and almost subconsciously wanted to scold Noah. That was the Demon King. If it could be defeated so easily, then Mandela would not have needed to lower himself to ask for help at all. Wasn't it too early to talk about the reward now? Mandela, who had these thoughts flash through his mind, immediately dispelled this idea and came up with another one. If the man in front of him really had thousands of divine personas bestowed weapons, then he might really be able to defeat the Demon King. With thousands of divine personas bestowed gifts, Noah would have to be at least a 4-digit level just by relying on those gifts alone. What's more, in the operation headquarters of the Fire Dragon's birth ceremony, Noah did not use any of the gifts. He only used 2 fingers to block Mandela's sword and forced Mandela to retreat. It was impossible that he only relied on those powerful divine personas. In this case, with Noah's own strength and the many divine personas bestowed gifts, he would definitely be able to reach the 4-digit level. As long as it was not a 3-digit level existence like the Asura gods and Buddhas in various myths and legends, then defeating the Demon King with 4-digit strength was not a fantasy. So, Mandela was silent for a while. After a while, he looked at Noah. What kind of reward do you want? In other words, he allowed Noah to do as he pleased. Noah's eyes flashed, then he suddenly smiled and turned his gaze to Shadora, the leader of Salamandra. In that case, my condition is that if we help you defeat the Demon King, the ownership of the Demon King will belong to us. No name, huh? Shadora was stunned. The others were also slightly stunned, then they fell silent one after another. Only 16 knights and Ren's eyes lit up slightly. There was no doubt that the Demon King was a natural disaster for the box. However, this also proved that the power of every Demon King was extremely terrifying. Therefore, if they could get a Demon King to join them, it would be a good thing that could only be chanced upon and not sought after. However, in the box, there was such a rule. Once they were able to clear the game held by the Demon King, then the Demon King would forever belong to the community that cracked the game. And if there were more than 2 communities that cracked the game, then the ownership of the Demon King would be negotiated between the participating communities. According to this rule, only one of the 2 communities, No Name and Salamandra, who were involved in the invading Demon King's gift game, would be able to obtain the ownership of the Demon King. At this moment, Noah was asking Salamandra to give the ownership of the Demon King to No Name. This. Shadora hesitated. There was no other way. For Salamandra, which did not have many elite members, the Demon King joining them was also a very attractive thing. It was not an exaggeration to say that it would be like adding wings to a tiger. Giving away the ownership of a Demon King just like that, no matter who it was something that could not be magnanimous. Shadora was only 11 years old. It was too difficult for Shadora to make such an important decision. As for Mandela, he had something to say, but he was stopped by 16 knights who had been staring at him. Only the leader of the community can make such a decision, right? Suddenly, Mandela was speechless. Looking at Shadora's troubled expression, Noah decided to give her a final push. Clang! At this moment, the entire space was replaced by a dazzling golden light. Everyone who fell into silence was suddenly shocked. When they raised their heads, the scene that appeared in front of everyone's eyes made everyone's eyes tremble. They saw golden ripples that emitted a bright golden light flashing out of the space around Noah like water waves. Inside, an ancient and noble aura, extremely luxurious-looking sabers, swords, spears, halberds, and other weapons slowly appeared. Looking at the golden ripples that filled the entire space, as well as the sabers, swords, spears, halberds, and all kinds of weapons emerging from the golden ripples, everyone was in a daze. Except for Reverse 16 Knights, who didn't know much about the weapons in myths and legends, the rest were all able to distinguish the origins of those weapons. Bestowing a weapon. Ren was in a daze. It's true. All of them are Godhead-level weapons bestowed. How is this possible? Mandela was shocked. How could such a thing really happen? Really? White Yiksha laughed bitterly. Even though I've seen it once, I can't help but be shocked. There are really so many Godhead-level weapons bestowed. Shadora's eyes glowed brightly as she stared at Noah. This person might really be able to help us defeat the Demon King. Looking at the group of people who were looking at the relic in a daze, Noah knew that his intimidation had worked. What do you think? Noah looked straight at Shadora. If this is the case, do you believe that I have the ability to defeat the Demon King and obtain the rights to the Demon King? Shadora nodded her head heavily. Thus, Shadora agreed. Chapter 13:10. After settling the matter of the Demon King's attack, Shadora began to discuss the Fire Dragon's birth ceremony with everyone. They mainly talked about the Fire Dragon's birth ceremony. After all, if the Demon King chose to attack during the Fire Dragon's birth ceremony, it meant that he wanted to attack during the Fire Dragon's birth ceremony. Therefore, including Noah, 16 Knights, and Byakuya, everyone thought that the Demon King would not attack after the Fire Dragon's birth ceremony. The Fire Dragon's birth ceremony would take a few more days. In other words, the Demon King would choose a time in these few days to attack the 40000000 outer sect. In view of this, Salamandra, as the organizer of the Fire Dragon's birth ceremony, would let the military police increase their vigilance in these few days to not let go of any suspicious places. No Name, on the other hand, would stay by Shadora's side during this period of time to ensure her safety. As one of the leaders of the North District, the possibility of Shadora being targeted by the Demon King was very high. Therefore, not only No Name's group, but even Byakuya would accompany Shadora in public to protect the safety of this young leader of the North District and prevent her from being harmed by the Demon King. Shadora seemed to have some opinions about the fact that everyone put her safety first, but she did not voice it out. Perhaps, Shadora thought that compared to her safety, the 40000000 outer sect needed more protection. Unfortunately, unlike Salamandra, No Name did not have many members. In fact, there were very few members. There were only 4 people, Noah, 16 Knights, Joyu, and Haruhide Masaaki. Even if Hei too was included, there were only 5 people. As for Ren, this young leader did not have much combat strength and could not be considered as part of the group. This way, even if Letitia and Aster were included, No Name could only take out 7 people. Using 7 people to protect the safety of the entire 400000 outer sect? No matter what, it was not realistic. Moreover, the Demon King would attack during the Fire Dragon's birth ceremony, so it was very likely that he would attack Shadora. Focusing on protecting Shadora was the most rational thing to do. It was because of this that Shadora didn't raise any objections. She could only acquiesce. The final decision was that during the Fire Dragon's birth ceremony, as long as they were in public, the people from No Name would accompany Shadora. Tomorrow, there will only be one game of grace that Shadora will host. In the end, Mandela threw out this sentence. I hope that you will all be there. After saying that, Shadora and Mandela once again looked at Noah discreetly. Then, they left the reception hall and returned to the operation headquarters of the Fire Dragon birth ceremony. Looking at the direction in which Shadora and Mandela left, 16 Knights shrugged as he recalled the gazes they cast at Noah when they left. It seems that the limelight this time has been completely stolen by this little brother. Why? Do you want to be in the limelight? Noah glanced at 16 Knights. Then why didn't you just teach that Mandela guy a lesson? I guarantee that you will be in the limelight more than anything else. Unfortunately, that guy didn't look for trouble with me. 16 Knights curled his lips. If you don't scare him, maybe I will be able to make a move later? Seeing the dangerous smile on the face of 16 Knights, Ren, who clearly knew how troublesome this problem child was, felt his scalp go numb. He quickly opened his mouth. Please don't do that. We are now in a cooperative relationship with Salamandra. Don't do anything that will damage our relationship. If you really want to be in the limelight, just take out your grace card and show it to others. White Yiksha said gloatingly. Although it's not as unbelievable as Noah taking out thousands of divine sparks, even Laplace couldn't identify your truth unknown. I guarantee that many people will also find it unbelievable. Then forget it. 16 Knights spread his hands. I want to be in the limelight, not show off. For things like showing off, it's better to wait until I defeat an arrogant opponent and take out the grace card when the other party asks, what is your grace card? That's cool and interesting. Hearing this kind of development, everyone could only look at each other in dismay. Then, they didn't know whether to laugh or cry. However, it had to be said that this kind of situation could really happen. It was indeed quite eye-catching. Well, I hope the two of you can be of great use in the war with the Demon King. White Yiksha waved the paper fan in his hand and smiled meaningfully. Although, before that, the Demon King will be dealt with by me, the strongest ruler of the hierarchy. Oh. 16 Knights raised his eyebrows and showed a typical provocative smile. In other words, White Yiksha, you want to compete with me for prey? You're probably the only ones who can treat the Demon King as prey, White Yiksha said helplessly. Although I don't have any thoughts of snatching your prey, I'm still the ruler of the hierarchy. Facing the Demon King is my responsibility. White Yiksha, who said this, didn't consider that he would be defeated. However, this was to be expected, right? As for why, the reason was very simple. Because White Yiksha was the materialization of the celestial law called the heavenly shaking theory. The so-called heavenly shaking theory referred to the geocentric theory. In the heavenly shaking theory, the Earth was the center of the universe and the other planets orbited the Earth. Including the Sun. White Yiksha was the materialization of this heavenly shaking theory. The celestial law that existed before the concept of heaven and earth was born ruled the center of all the views of the universe. However, with the development of human history, the heavenly shaking theory was gradually denied. As the materialization of the celestial law, White Yiksha's spirit kept shrinking. In the end, it was suppressed to the horizon of the White Night, becoming the king of the White Night that would never set or turn dark. Because of this, White Yiksha was one of the star spirits in charge of the sun's operation. He was also the highest existence that could be compared to the highest level of the sun god. At the same time, he had the divine might of the gods and also the royal might of the Demon King. The White Night King, born from these two, was the strongest star spirit and was ranked 10th in the box court. Even though Ling's personality was constantly shrinking and had converted to Buddhism, becoming a Yiksha, a ghost god in charge of water and earth, Ling's personality was once again degraded. As a star spirit and a god, White Yiksha was not someone that any Demon King could do anything to. If one wanted to defeat White Yiksha, one had to be at least a 3-digit level. And if White Yiksha returned the godhood he had obtained after converting to Buddhism and returned to the state of the purest and strongest star spirit, even the 3-digit Asura gods and Buddhas would not be able to do anything to this cheating existence. Considering this point, with White Yiksha around, no matter what kind of opponent came, even if it was a Demon King, there was nothing to be afraid of. However, Noah looked at White Yiksha. I think it's better for you to be careful. This sentence stunned White Yiksha and he frowned. What? Do you think I'll lose to a mere Demon King? No, in terms of combat strength, I'm afraid that an existence that can guarantee that he can defeat you has not appeared until now, right? Noah shook his head. However, almost everyone knows that the fire dragon's birth ceremony this time is jointly held by the East and North districts. They also know that you, White Yiksha, will definitely be here. Even so, the Demon King will still attack. This proves that the other party must have prepared a method to deal with you. You'd better be careful. White Yiksha fell silent. After a while, White Yiksha nodded. You're right. It's better for me to be careful. At that moment, the door opened. A shop assistant walked in a flustered manner and bowed in salute. Everyone, your companion, Miss Jiu Yuan Fei Niao, is injured. This sentence made the expressions of Noah and company change. Chapter 13:11. When Noah, reverse 16 Nights, Ren, and Byakuya walked out of Thousand Eyes Lounge and arrived at the entrance of the shop, Kuyuki Soyuki happened to be supported by Hiroi Bun and Kurorobi as they walked in. Seeing Jio Yuki's condition, the group stopped. At this time, Jio Yuki's clothes had marks that looked like they were bitten by sharp teeth. It was also stained with mud and the blood of unknown creatures. It looked very dirty. Not only that, but Noah and the others could also clearly see the teeth marks on ancient flying bird's skin, which was usually not exposed to the sun, through the gaps in his clothes that looked like they were bitten by sharp teeth. More than half of the blood on Jiuyuan flying bird's body came from the blood that seeped out from the teeth marks. Looking at Jio Yuki's miserable appearance, Noah silently looked at Letitia, who was at the back. Letitia lowered her head slightly, and even her voice became a little low. Sorry, Master. The reason why Noah let Letitia stay with Jio Yuki and Hiroyuki was because he was afraid that Kurorobi would not be able to stop these two problem children if they were to cause trouble. However, Letitia admitted that since Noah let her follow Jio Yuki, then whether it was because of Noah's orders or because of the same community of companions, she should protect Jio Yuki. Therefore, Jio Yuki's injuries, Letitia thought that it was because she did not protect her well enough. Letitia's apology was not only to ask for forgiveness from Noah, but also to ask for forgiveness from herself. It was not only Letitia. Even Kurorobi and Hiroyuki seemed to blame themselves, thinking that they did not protect Jio Yuki well enough. Under such circumstances, Jiu Yuan Fei Niao hurriedly spoke. I suddenly left the group and acted alone, that's why it's like this. It has nothing to do with anyone. However, as soon as she said that, a light and tender voice with some worry and timidity sounded. Yuki? The sudden voice startled Noah and the others. They turned their eyes and looked at the source of the voice. Only then did they realize. On Jio Yuki's shoulder, there was a little person smaller than a palm. It was a little person that was emitting light, wearing a pointy hat, like a fairy in a fairy tale. Seeing this little person, 16 Nights was surprised. Miss, what is that on your shoulder? Jiu Yuan Flying Bird shook his head in confusion and said, That's right. This is what I encountered by chance when I was shopping. When it saw me, it ran. I left the group to chase this child. In the end, I was attacked by a large group of rats at an art exhibition. Rat? 16 Nights was stunned. Rats? Ren was also stunned. Rats? Yiksha could not help but be stunned. So that's how it is. Although Noah was also a little stunned, he was more enlightened. Most of the blood on your body is rat's blood, right? Yes. Jio Yuki said helplessly. Because the exhibition is in a cave, in order not to cause a collapse, I did not dare to use the gift of simulated godhood. Moreover, there are many ordinary people there. If I am not careful, they will also be affected. So, I was bitten by the rats. But, Ren said in confusion. Why would the rats attack you? Someone is probably manipulating those rats behind the scenes. Hiroi Hybe said very seriously. When we arrived at the scene, Yuki was entangled by the rats. Before Black Rabbit and Letitia drove the rats away, I tried to talk to them, but none of them responded. They should have lost their consciousness and rationality. But why would the person manipulating the rats attack Miss Yuki? Black Rabbit was puzzled. Miss Yuki just arrived in the North District. Even if she came to the box court, it was only a month ago. She has no time to make enemies. There is no reason to be attacked for no reason. Who said that the other party must attack Miss? 16 Knights looked at the pointed hat elf standing on Jio Yuki's shoulder. His eyes became sharp. Maybe, the other party attacked that little guy over there? Ah. The elf with the pointy hat was frightened by the sharp gaze of 16 Knights. He screamed and hid behind the waist-length hair of distant bird. However, 16 Knights wasn't wrong. If Jio Yuki was not attacked, then it could only be the pointed hat elf who was with Jio Yuki was the target of the attack. Thus, everyone silently gathered their gazes on Jio Yuki's hair. Being stared at by so many people, perhaps it really scared the elf with the pointed hat, causing the little fellow to shiver and hide behind the neck of the distant bird. Okay, everyone. Jio Yuki quickly protected the pointed hat elf and stared at Noah and the others. Don't scare this child. Seeing Jio Yuki's protective behavior, everyone could only look at each other and then bitterly laugh. No matter what, go wash off the dirt and blood on your body. White Yiksha said resolutely. Your clothes are also torn. You should change. Although the scars on your body are very small, it's inappropriate for a woman who should take care of her skin. There's a hot spring in the shop that can be used for treatment. Fei Niao, you can go there and take a bath. Saying this, White Yiksha's gaze swept past Jio Yuki, Hiroi Biao, and Letitia. In the end, it stopped on Black Rabbit, who had the best figure, and revealed a covetous expression. This is a rare opportunity. The female faction should go and have a peaceful bath together. Seeing White Yiksha's expression, Jio Yuki, Hiroi Biao, Letitia, Black Rabbit, and the other girls all shivered. They felt that it was becoming a bit dangerous. As the saying goes, girls always spend the most time on things like washing up and dressing up. By the time the group of girls came out of the outdoor bathing area, it was already almost an hour later. Everyone changed into kimono-style bathrobes and returned to the living room. Then, as the leader, Ren explained the situation to everyone. The Demon King is attacking? After hearing the whole story, the reaction of the girls was completely different. Jiusuka and Haruhi Byari's eyes lit up, and they started to get restless. They fully displayed the fearless nature of a problematic child who only wished for the world to be in chaos. Black Rabbit and Letitia were shocked, and the other had a solemn expression. Their reactions were the complete opposite of Jio Yuki and Hiroi Biao's. That was natural. Although it was not to the extent of once bitten, twice shy, the tragic fate of No Name being destroyed by the Demon King lingered in Black Rabbit and Letitia's hearts. Now that they knew that the Demon King would attack the Fire Dragon's birth ceremony, how could Black Rabbit and Letitia not be worried? However, the two girls also understood that the time to confront the Demon King again would come. Therefore, whether it was Black Rabbit or Letitia, after being shocked, they calmed down and focused their attention on Noah and 16 Knights. Seeing this, Noah said innocently. Why are you looking at us? Yeah. 16 Knights put her hand on Ren's shoulder. The leader of the community is the little guy, and the countermeasures to deal with the appearance of the Demon King should be decided by the little guy. Hearing Noah and 16 Knights' words, everyone remembered what was going on. It was not that they ignored Ren's position as the leader, but Noah and 16 Knights' influence in the community was greater than the leader, which caused everyone to subconsciously seek their opinions. Ren, who was also well aware of this, did not express any opinions and just said, We have already reached an agreement with the Salamandra, and we will assist in fighting the Demon King. Hearing this, everyone's expression turned serious and they all nodded. Just like this, the night gradually passed. Chapter 13:12. The next day, Noah woke up early from his sleep. He was already dressed. He also washed up with Letitia's help. Noah held the small sword that Aster had transformed into. He brought Letitia out of the room that Thousand Eyes had prepared for him and came to the entrance of the shop. There, led by Byakuya, 16 Nights Reversal, Jo Yuasuke, Haruhi Hiroyuki, and Ren were all ready and waiting for Noah's arrival. What's wrong? Bro? Why are you the last to arrive? 16 Nights Reversal put one hand in his pocket and looked at Letitia, who was behind Noah. We don't have a blonde vampire maid to serve us. We woke up earlier than you. It's just the same as usual. I woke up and washed up normally. I didn't intentionally delay or be late. Isn't the timing just right? Noah replied. You're not a kid anymore. Are you so excited that you couldn't sleep when you heard that you could participate in the festival the next day? So excited that you couldn't sleep? 16 Nights Reversal grinned. You're right. I was so excited that I couldn't sleep. Noah laughed and shook his head, then looked at Jo Yuasuke. On Jo Yuasuke's shoulder, the elf with the pointed hat was still there. When she saw Noah looking at her, she immediately hid behind Jo Yuasuke's hair. Seeing this, Noah raised his eyebrows and looked at Jo Yuasuke. It seems that this little fairy has completely pestered you. Really? Jo Yuasuke had a natural smile on her face. But, it feels good. Yuasuke is surprisingly popular with children, Haruhi Hiroyuki said calmly. She'll definitely be a good mother in the future. Mom? Jo Yuasuke opened her eyes wide and looked at Haruhi Hiroyuki angrily. Haruhi-san. What are you talking about? Haruhi Hiroyuki tilted his head and looked confused. Am I wrong? That's right, that's right. 16 Nights laughed out loud. It's just that eldest miss doesn't seem to have any immunity to the fact that she became a single mother at the age of 15. Jo Yufei glared at Reverse 16 Nights. The scene was as noisy as ever, causing Noah to be at a loss whether to laugh or cry. Everyone, please calm down first. Ren quickly comforted them. It's going to be the finale of the fire dragon's birth ceremony. Now is not the time to quarrel. Seriously, we might have to face the Demon King's attack today. The black rabbit pulled its long rabbit ears. Why isn't anyone nervous at all? Isn't it good? Letitia smiled. Facing the Demon King, rather than being blindly nervous, it's better to be a little more relaxed. It'll make people feel more at ease. No matter what, our preparations are complete, Noah said faintly. From now on, we'll just have to rely on our strength and a little bit on our fate. Resigned to fate? 16 Nights curled his lips into a smile. Well, it's not bad to come once in a while. Not bad is not bad, but I don't want to leave the lives of so many people in the outer sect to be decided by the heavens. White Yiksha looked around at everyone with an unprecedentedly serious expression. So, I'll leave it to you. Noah and the others immediately nodded. Just like that, the group set off and headed to the venue of the gift game hosted by Shadora. On the boundary wall between the eastern and northern districts, there was a tunnel that was specially dug out from a huge rock wall. This tunnel led to a gaming venue. The gaming venue had a circular outline. The audience seats were set up along the outline, showing the ancient Roman Colosseum that surrounded the venue. And in the center of the venue, there was a high platform. Black Rabbit, who was wearing a provocative miniskirt, held a microphone in her hand. Its function was no different from a microphone. She came to the center of the high platform and smiled at the audience seats that were divided into a circle. Sorry for the long wait. The main gift game of the Fire Dragon's birth ceremony is about to begin. The host and referee will be Thousand Eyes exclusive referee. I, Black Rabbit, will be in charge of serving everyone. Everyone, please give me your advice. Under Black Rabbit's familiar introduction and smile, a wave of loud cheers mixed with strange roars sounded around the audience seats. The sound frequency that caused the entire venue to shake resounded through the sky. You too. You too is really here. I'm here especially for Rabbit. Please perform well. Hakata Aristocrat. Let us take a peek at the scenery under your skirt. Amazing enthusiasm and loud cheers reverberated throughout the entire venue. Although the black rabbit still had a smile on its face, its rabbit ears were trembling, and it seemed to be a little scared. Amidst the deafening cheers, at the front of the venue, on the balcony of the Fire Dragon's birth ceremony's operation headquarters, Noah and the others sat there as VIPs under Shidora's special arrangement. Looking at the shockingly enthusiastic audience seats, Kiyoshi Asaka and Hiroi Buyao's expressions were stiff and disdainful. Black Rabbit is really popular. Although I don't envy her at all, while the two girls looked at the audience who were extremely excited because of Black Rabbit's provocative miniskirt with disdain, 16 Knights and Byakuya were also looking at the scenery under Black Rabbit's skirt with binoculars. Even Letitia couldn't stand it anymore. Master. Letitia sighed as if she couldn't stand it. You have thousands of Godhead gifts. Do you have any gift that can help your companions return to the right path? Even I feel that this request is too difficult. Noah also sighed and looked at Black Rabbit on the stage. By the way, why did you suddenly let Black Rabbit be the referee? It wasn't Letitia who answered this question, but Byakuya. I officially asked Black Rabbit to be the referee and host of the game. Byakuya didn't even take down the binoculars in his hand. He peeked at Black Rabbit on the stage with relish and explained as he watched. The news of Rabbit's arrival at the Fire Dragon's birthday ceremony has already spread. Many people are looking forward to Black Rabbit's appearance in the Game of Blessings as a referee. Furthermore, the game has the Hakata nobles as the game's referee, so the rules of the game have an inviolable legitimacy. Whether it goes against the audience's expectations to hype up the atmosphere of the ceremony or to normalize the game, having Black Rabbit appear as the referee is a beneficial and harmless thing. Is that so? Noah nodded thoughtfully. However, since the game needs to be legitimate and Shadora has to personally watch the battle, then this gift game is indeed very large-scale, right? It's considered the finale of the Fire Dragon's birth ceremony. Byakuya continued. Before this, there was also a selection competition to select the players to participate in this gift game. As a result, among the communities that qualified to participate, there were even communities that established bases in the outer sect with a 6-digit number. A community with a 6-digit number? Noah was surprised. Why would the communities on the upper level participate in the game held by the outer sect on the lower level? They probably want to get the reward from the ruler of the level, right? Letitia said. Although it's a game held at the lowest level, the organizers are Thousand Eyes and Salamandra. It's not surprising that the prize can attract a community with a 6-digit number. Noah nodded in understanding. At this time, Haruhibu Yaichi, who had sharp 5 senses, noticed something strange. He raised his head and looked at the sky. Then, his eyes widened and he exclaimed. What is that? Hearing this, everyone was startled and raised their heads to look at the sky. Then, everyone saw it. Pieces of black parchment fell from the sky like feathers. Riding the wind, they slowly floated down from the sky. Looking at the pieces of black parchment floating down, Noah furrowed his brows. Those are black contract documents? Chapter 13:13. In the air above the boundary wall between the 3,999,999 outer gate at the border of the Eastern District and the 4,000,000 outer gate at the border of the Northern District, 4 figures were standing at a height of about 2,000 meters above the protruding boundary wall. There were 4 figures of completely different sizes. The one standing on the left was a woman in her 20s. She was wearing a revealing white dress, had platinum hair, and was emitting a seductive aura. She was holding a long flute in her hand. The one standing on the right was a muscular man wearing a black military uniform. He had short black hair, and carried a long flute as thick as a stick on his shoulder. The one standing at the back had a smooth appearance made of a material similar to pottery. Many ventilation holes were dug out all over its body, making it look like a huge anthropomorphic flute with a length of more than 50 feet. There was also a huge ventilation hole on its face, making it seem like a puppet. As for the one standing at the front, she was a petite girl around 12 or 13 years old. She was wearing a black and white patterned dress and snow boots. These 4 figures with completely different temperaments, appearances, and auras stood in a slanted square on the high boundary wall, looking down below. Their gazes landed on the location where the fire dragon birth ceremony was held. Looking at the venue that was filled with deafening cheers that could be heard even from more than 2,000 meters away, the seductive woman twirled the flute in her hand and said in disdain or envy, "A disaster is about to befall us, and they are still happily holding a ceremony? What's wrong, Latina? Lating?" The robust man glanced at the other party. "Do you want to participate as well? If there's someone who can make me happy, then it's not impossible to consider Wells." The woman named Lating smiled sweetly. "It's just that, in that place, the only people who are qualified to be our opponents should be Salamandra, the little girl who has just been promoted to the position of the class leader, and the terrifying Sun Star spirit in the Eastern District, right? Did you forget that you met those little girls when you were controlling the rats yesterday?" Will narrowed his eyes. "Among them, there are nobles and pure-blooded vampires. That short-haired girl doesn't seem to be an ordinary person either. In addition, there's that elf who's guarding the pointy hat. She has some beads in her hand, but she's hesitant to use them. It's obvious that she's hiding some trump card. Don't be careless. We do need to be careful of pure-bred vampires. Hakata nobles can't casually participate in games, even if it's the Demon King's gift game, so there's nothing to worry about." Lating raised her eyebrows slightly. "As for those two little girls, I don't think there's anything special about them. It's just that you're thinking too much." "There's nothing wrong with being careful," Wei-shi said noncommittally. "No matter what, in such a large outer sect and such a lively ceremony, it's not strange for 2 or 3 opponents to appear that we need to be serious about." "That's true." La Ting nodded in agreement, but then she looked at the petite girl standing at the front with a happy smile. "But, with Master here, there shouldn't be a problem, right?" Hearing this, the young girl standing in front, wearing a black and white patterned dress, raised her delicate face that was completely emotionless, and announced with a monotonous voice. "Let's begin." Hearing the girl's voice, whether it was Wei-shi or Lating, both showed a cruel smile. "Yes. My master." On the other side, in the venue where the fire dragon's birth ceremony was held, all the spectators stopped cheering and looked at the black parchments falling from the sky with blank expressions. Those parchments were like pieces of black feathers, lightly floating down. Noah, 16 Knights, Jiu Yu Fei Niao, and Hiroi Bu Yao looked at the pieces of black parchment that were floating down. Their eyes gradually narrowed. Because those were contract documents. The necessary gift to hold the gift game. However, in the month since they came here, whether it was Noah, 16 Knights Reverse, Jio Yuki, or Hiroi Hikari, they had never seen a black contract document. That ominous color was simply a representation of the word abnormal in reality. "It's actually a black contract document?" White Yiksha suddenly stood up from his seat. "That's the Demon King's contract document." When the word Demon King entered the ears of Noah and the others almost simultaneously reached out their hands and caught the black contract document floating in front of them. It was a contract document with a seal with a picture of a clown playing a flute. It was written on the contract document. Gift game name, the Pied Piper of Hamelin participant list, 399999 Outer Gate and 400000 Outer Gate Realm Stage Area are the community of all participants and organizers. Designated Game Leader, Sun's Traveler, Stars White Yiksha. Organizers Victory Condition, subdue and kill all participants. Participants Victory Condition 1. Defeat the organizer's game leader. Participants Victory Condition 2, break the false inheritance and establish the true inheritance. Pledge, respect the above content, based on the honor, flag, and organizer's authority, hold the gift game. Grim Kimwar Hamelin Seal. When the contents of the black contract document were revealed to the audience one by one, the stage fell into a deathly silence. What broke the deathly silence was a heart-wrenching scream from who knows where in the audience. The demon. The Demon King has appeared. Accompanied by such a heart-wrenching scream, panic suddenly filled the entire space. Ah! The blood-curdling screams turned into sound waves that reverberated throughout the entire space. In the audience, one by one, the audience began to flee in panic as if they had encountered a fire. Calm down. Shadora stood up from her seat and yelled in a panic. Everyone, calm down. All right, Shadora, it doesn't matter how loud you shout. Those who are running for their lives won't be able to hear you. Noah turned around and looked at Shadora. Hurry up and organize Salamandra to evacuate the crowd. Yes. Yes. Shadora quickly responded and looked at Mandela. However, at this time, Mandela was already giving orders to the surrounding Salamandra members. Hurry up and evacuate the crowd. Yes. After the response, the Salamandra members began to jump off the stage and went to the audience to evacuate the crowd. Damn it. White Yiksha's face sank fiercely and his whole body exuded a terrifying aura. How dare you act so brazenly, I will never let you go. Before he could finish his sentence, a gust of black wind suddenly swept up in the space around Bayasha. Like a pitch-black fog, it completely enveloped Bayasha. Everyone present, including Noah, was shocked. It was also at this moment that the black wind swirling around White Yiksha suddenly expanded. Bang! The violent impact shook the surroundings, and the people on the balcony of the operation headquarters were all sent flying. 16 knights and Mandela, who were shocked by the sudden impact, reacted in time, turned around, stabilized their bodies, and landed steadily on the ground. Haruhi Hiroyuki and Letitia also reacted. One was surrounded by a whirlwind, while the other had a pair of shadow-like black wings on her back, floating in the air. Only Jiuyuan Flying Bird protected the elf with the pointy hat in his arms. He closed his eyes and fell down with a look of resignation. Until a warm embrace embraced Kori Hiroyuki. Kori Hiroyuki quickly opened her eyes and let out a sigh of relief. Noah. However, Noah did not respond to Kori Hiroyuki's call. He gently raised his eyes and looked at the sky. Over there, several figures slowly descended. Chapter 13-14. Looking at the few figures descending from the sky, everyone held their breaths. Although it hadn't been confirmed yet, and they couldn't even see the figure's body clearly, everyone present had a resonance in their hearts almost at the same time. Among those people, there was definitely the Demon King who would attack this time. After causing panic and then descending from the sky like a high and mighty figure? Reverse 16 Knights stared closely at the few figures in the distance, and with a very happy expression, shouted happily. Not bad. Really not bad. This is the Demon King who brings disaster and fear. Bastard. With an insolent smile, Reverse 16 Knights, who was filled with excitement and joy, had a rare moment of hot-headedness. He crouched down, and like a cannonball, with a bang, he set off an astonishing shockwave and violently shot towards the boundary wall. No one had time to stop Reverse 16 Knights, who was charging with the speed of the third universe, and the existence that violated the rules burst out, and disappeared in the blink of an eye. That idiot. Jill Yuao subconsciously hugged Noah's neck, and said somewhat angrily. He actually acted on his own accord. Noah also frowned, and felt somewhat helpless in his heart. Reverse 16 Knights, at first glance, looked like a bad person, but in fact, he was a real smart person, and the knowledge and wisdom in his head was not below Noah's. However, compared to Noah, Reverse 16 Knights was less steady and calm, and more arrogant and unscrupulous. Therefore, this guy would also be loyal to his heart, and when passion and enthusiasm appeared in his heart, he would never deliberately suppress it, and would even do things regardless of the consequences. Although Noah felt that when it was time to be calm, Reverse 16 Knights would definitely remain calm, but in a situation where there was no need to be calm, this guy was just a hot-headed problem child. So, Noah landed on the ground, and put down Jiu Yuao in his arms. At the same time, Haruhito Hikari and Letitia also landed from midair. Master. Letitia looked at Noah with an unprecedentedly serious expression. Now, what should we do? Now, most of the people from Salamandra, are evacuating the crowd. I think only Shadora and Mandela can move freely. You guys should move with them, Noah said fluently without the slightest hesitation. Those two should be confirming the abnormality that happened to White Yiksha, so as to avoid encountering such an unknown method in the battle with the Demon King. Therefore, you should also confirm White Yiksha's situation. As long as we can release White Yiksha, we will be no different from victory. What about you? Haruhibu Yaichi looked at Noah. What do you plan to do? Our opponent is the Demon King. How can we let that problem child act on her own? Noah smiled bitterly and shook his head. Then, the corners of his mouth slowly lifted to an unnoticeable angle. Besides, it's not like I'm not interested in that so-called Demon King. Leaving this sentence, Noah's figure turned into a stream of light and directly rushed in the direction of the boundary wall. Only then did Koyuki, Haruhito Hikari, and Letitia look at each other, nodded, and ran in the direction of White Yiksha. At the same time, Will and Lading jumped down from the high boundary wall and landed on the ground far away. Above the two of them, the petite girl riding on the head of the puppet that seemed to be made of ceramic was also following the gravitational pull, continuously descending. The plan of the group was very simple. None of the people here were interested in the people who were fleeing in panic. Therefore, the group planned to directly go to the stage in front of the operation headquarters of the Fire Dragon's birth ceremony and meet those who could be called their opponents in this game. This plan was mercilessly dispelled after 0.1 seconds. Shio dash. Accompanied by an ear-piercing sound, a figure soared into the sky like a rocket. With a terrifying speed that surpassed the speed of the third universe, it violently shot in front of Will and Lading who were in the vanguard. No. To be more precise, it should be said that it violently shot in front of Will. Shio dash. Will's expression changed. He only had time to do this before a face with an arrogant smile was imprinted in Will's eyes. We finally meet. 16 Knights Reversal grinned, his eyes bursting with a dense light. Lord Demon King. As soon as the words fell, a fist carrying a terrifying force was like a meteor that heavily bombarded Will's abdomen. Bang! A shocking muffled sound reverberated. Goo! Wei Shui let out a bitter cry. His entire body was like a cannonball, rubbing against the air. Amidst the sound of breaking air, he heavily smashed into the tall boundary wall. Wei Shi! Lading cried out in alarm and quickly stopped herself, floating in midair. As for the petite girl riding on Tao Bing, she stared at 16 Knights, who had sent Wei Shi flying with a single punch. Her eyes flickered with interest. To be able to send Will flying, this man seems to have some ability. Unfortunately, no matter how capable 16 Knights was, he was just a human. Of course, none of the humans had wings. 16 Knights, who flew over without considering the consequences, could only follow the gravity and descend. The solution to this predicament was a wave of wind. A gust of wind and waves swept up without any warning. The wind and waves surrounded Reverse 16 Knights, and Reverse 16 Knights slowly floated up, stopping him from falling. Is this the wind of the Kasuga tribe? 16 Knights stood up in surprise, then shook his head. No, the wind of the Kasuga tribe is different from this. Did little brother come up with some interesting method? That's right. The wind that surrounded Reverse 16 Knights was precisely the magic that Noah had used on Reverse 16 Knights after tearing open a third-grade scroll of the normal gale. Seeing this scene, the girl in the patterned dress eyes flashed slightly, then she turned her head and looked behind her. Over there, Noah was floating in the air. His gaze shot over and met the young girl's gaze. Everyone suddenly fell silent. 16 Knights felt as if he could control the wind around him with his will. Thus, he controlled his body and flew to Noah's side, standing side by side with Noah and giggling. I say, little brother, you already have 2 Lolita maids at home. You should be satisfied. It's better not to stare at the spotted Lolita over there from the start, right? Noah almost fell to the ground. At this moment, Wei Shi, who had been sent flying by 16 Knights, flew back and looked at 16 Knights with a ruthless gaze. Damn brat. Will. La Ting floated beside Wei Shi. Together with Wei Shi, they stood side by side in front of the petite girl riding on the huge terracotta soldier as if they were going to confront Noah and 16 knights. You are too careless, aren't you? You better be careless. Will spat out a mouthful of saliva. That brat. No, those two brats are not ordinary people. No matter which one it is, I didn't notice them until they came close. Me too. La Ting said helplessly. It seems like you are right. There are 2 or 3 opponents that we need to deal with seriously. That's a good thing. Will suddenly smiled. This way, our actions will have meaning. Noah and reverse 16 knights narrowed their eyes when they saw Will and La Ting talking to each other as if there was no one else around. Then, they looked at the petite girl who was riding on the giant terracotta soldier. It was obvious that she was being protected by Will and La Ting. Then, 16 knights turned around and glanced at Noah with a displeased look. It seems like the person who made the right choice is you. Reverse 16 knights' attack was Weezer. However, Will was not the Demon King. As soon as Noah appeared, he only had eyes for the petite girl. Therefore, 16 knights said that Noah made the right choice. He chose the one with the biggest head. Under such circumstances, the petite girl smiled casually and opened her arms. Her voice echoed between heaven and earth. Come and play. Chapter 13-15. Let's play. Following this sentence, which sounded like a playful and willful little girl, the atmosphere of the entire space suddenly changed. Noah and 16 knights narrowed their eyes at the same time. The petite girl riding on the huge terracotta soldier opened her hand, and a strange black wind suddenly gushed out from the sleeve of her patterned dress. It was like a darkness formed by dense black locusts, and like a fog, it filled the entire space. Whether it was Noah or 16 knights, they both intuitively confirmed one thing. That gust of black wind was definitely not something simple. Before the game starts, let's ask. The petite girl opened her hands and let the black wind gush out from her sleeves. She looked condescendingly at Noah and 16 knights, and after a while, she opened her red lips. What are your names? Hearing this, Noah didn't have time to speak. 16 knights seemed to be dissatisfied with the petite girl's high and mighty attitude. He revealed an insufferably arrogant smile. Before asking for someone's name, you have to tell them your name first. This is the most basic etiquette, speckled lowly. Etiquette? The petite girl's tone became somewhat sarcastic. You didn't even say hello before punching someone else's subordinate. Is it appropriate for you to talk about etiquette? This should be considered the same, right? Noah looked up and stared at the petite girl. Attacking someone while they are happily holding a festival is no longer a matter of etiquette, but a matter of whether it's reasonable or not. There's no other way. The petite girl said this without any change in her emotions. After all, I'm the Demon King. The moment she finished speaking, the black wind that filled the entire space like a fog suddenly exploded, and like a violent wave, it rushed in the direction of Noah and 16 knights. Seeing this, the arrogant smile on 16 knights' face became slightly ferocious. Don't be so arrogant. After he finished speaking, 16 knights went against the black wind and kicked out a kick that carried a whistling chi. Bang! Under the kick of 16 knights, the black wind that surged forth like a violent wave directly exploded. W.H. La Ting gasped. Hey. Wei Shi was also shocked. Are you kidding? Not to mention Wei Shi and La Ting, even the petite girl was stunned for a moment and said in surprise. He broke the gift with a kick. In this box where all kinds of Asura gods and Buddhas gathered, it was not rare to see a gift that could nullify a gift. However, this was only limited to gift armaments that strengthened a single ability, that is, gift armaments that could only be materialized in the form of weapons and so on. The reason was simple. Since a gift that could nullify a gift was effective on a gift, then whether it was one's own gift or another's gift, it would have an effect on all of them. Therefore, under normal circumstances, the gifts that could nullify a gift were external objects in the form of weapons, tools, and so on. They could not belong to the individual. After all, different from the gift of a materialized weapon, the gift of an individual was a part of the soul. If that gift was a gift that could nullify a gift, then this person would not be able to obtain another gift in his life. Even if he obtained another gift, it would be directly erased by his own gift that could nullify a gift. In other words, if it was a gift of a weapon, it would be fine. But if someone had a gift that could nullify a gift, but there were other gifts, this was a contradiction in itself. And 16 Nights, as a human who did not have any special ability, but he could rush over at the speed of the third universe and send Wei Shi flying with a punch, it proved that 16 Nights had a gift that could provide a powerful physical strength. That gift was the gift of shatter the heavens and earth. In other words, 16 Nights made shatter the heavens and earth and power to shatter the gift at the same time. He had a powerful gift, but at the same time, he had the power to nullify the gift. Such a huge contradiction was the reason why others were shocked. What? Is this enough to surprise you? 16 Nights Reversal laughed arrogantly and uncontrollably. Hey! Cheer up. You are the Demon King. After saying this, Reverse 16 Nights stomped on the air. Space trembled, and a turbulent current appeared. His entire body was like a bullet fired from a gun. With the speed of the third universe, he charged in the direction of the petite girl. Oh no! Wei Shi and La Ting, who were still in shock, couldn't react in time. 16 Nights directly passed the two of them and rushed toward the petite girl at an astonishing speed that caused the atmosphere to become chaotic. Only then did the petite girl react. Her delicate and pretty face returned to its emotionless state, and she softly called. Shout Ram. The huge Tao Bing, who had been quietly floating in the air, suddenly raised its head with a huge ventilation hole, and suddenly opened its flute-like hand that was also covered with ventilation holes. Buzz! At this moment, the atmosphere in the surrounding space was crazily sucked into the huge Tao Bing, and the ventilation holes on its body were suddenly released. Whoosh! Violent atmospheric vortexes gushed out from the ventilation holes on Tao Bing's body, turning into ferocious shockwaves that spread out in all directions. Reverse 16 Nights, who was charging in the direction of the petite girl, was caught off guard by the violent atmospheric vortex and was blown away without any ability to resist. Looking at the Reverse 16th Night who was blown away, the petite girl gently smiled. She raised one of her hands and a strange black wind burst out from her long sleeves. It turned into a turbulent current and rushed towards the direction of the Reverse 16th Night. 16 Nights couldn't help but be speechless, but he still kicked the incoming black wind with force. Bang! With a muffled explosion, the incoming black wind was once again shattered by 16 Nights' kick. However, the powerful force of the black wind wasn't neutralized, and it made 16 Nights fly back at an even faster speed. It didn't take long for him to disappear from everyone's sight. The petite girl standing on the huge terracotta soldier named Shutram lowered her hand and spoke with an expressionless face. Chase after him. Yes. Will and Latting responded without any hesitation. Their bodies turned into arrows that left the bowstring, and flew in the direction where 16 Nights disappeared. After Will and Latting disappeared, the petite girl turned her head and looked at Noah, who had been silently observing from the side, and asked curiously. Why didn't you attack with your companions? If that's the case, that guy will probably blame me for disturbing his hard-earned enjoyment, right? Noah shrugged. Moreover, the game has just begun. Why are you in such a hurry? Aren't you in a hurry? The petite girl narrowed her eyes. Your game leader is trapped by me, and I don't know when something will happen. Even so, aren't you in a hurry? I say, aren't you underestimating White Yiksha too much? Noah looked at the petite girl with a smile that wasn't a smile. Even if the heavenly shaking theory is gradually being denied, and the spirit lattice is constantly shrinking, White Yiksha is still a top 10 powerhouse. Up until now, who knows how many Asuras, gods, and Buddhas couldn't do anything to her. A demon king that came out of nowhere wants to defeat her? Don't tell me you're new here. The expression on the petite girl's face began to sink. Oh. Noah raised his eyebrows. Looks like I guessed right. You really are a new demon king. The petite girl didn't admit or deny it. She only looked at Noah with a new gaze. After a while, she asked, "What's your name?" It was the same question as before. Facing this question, Noah looked at the petite girl with a meaningful gaze and suddenly smiled. "My name is Noah. Please take care of me, Miss Pest." The petite girl's expression finally changed for the first time. Chapter 13:16. Pest. When Noah mentioned the name of this petite girl with spotted patterns, the way the girl looked at Noah completely changed. All sorts of emotions started to flash through her eyes. There was surprise. There was doubt. There was confusion. There was doubt. All sorts of emotions flashed through the girl named Pest's eyes one after another, causing her to forget how to react. Pest's reaction was the highest level of affirmation to Noah's words. In other words, my guess is correct again? Pest finally reacted to Kieran's words. Pest's eyes gradually narrowed as she stared intently at Noah. Why? Why do I know your name? Asked Noah as he met Pest's gaze. Because I've almost gathered all the information I need. As he said that, Noah took out the contract sealed with the picture of a clown playing the flute. Bestowed game name, the Pied Piper of Hamelin participant list, 3999999 Outer Sect and 4000000 Outer Sect Realm Wall Stage Area are a community of all participants and organizers. Designated game leaders, Sun's Traveler, Stars White Yiksha. Organizers Victory Condition, subdue and kill all the participants. Participants Victory Condition 1, defeat the organizer's game leader. Participants Victory Condition 2, break the fake inheritance and establish the true inheritance. Oath, respect the above content and hold the bestowed game based on the honor, flag and organizer's authority. Grim Gimel Hamon, seal. Holding up the black contract, Noah slowly opened his mouth. The name of the game is the Pied Piper of Hamelin, which means the Pied Piper of Hamel. I think that when you see the name of the game, most people already understand that the Pied Piper of Hamel mentioned here should be that famous fairy tale, right? The Pied Piper of Hamelin. It was one of the fairy tales that originated from Grimm. Speaking of this fairy tale, there was one thing that had to be mentioned. That was the basis of this story. In Grimm's fairy tales, there were several stories that quoted real history for research. The Pied Piper of Hamel was one of them. The Hamel mentioned in the story was the town where the story took place. In the history of this town, there had been a large number of cases of children suddenly disappearing. Because of this case, there is even an inscription in the town of Hamel. This inscription was the prototype of Grimm's fairy tale, the Pied Piper of Hamel. This was what was recorded in the inscription. On the 26th of June 1284, on the anniversary of John and Paul, 130 children born in Hamel were lured out by the piper in colorful clothes and disappeared at the execution ground near the hills. This inscription was a true story that had happened in Hamel, and it was displayed together with a piece of stained glass. It was because of this inscription that one of Grimm's fairy tales, the Pied Piper of Hamel, was born. After the 16th century, this incident was adapted into a fairy tale. Among them, the piper was shaped into the image of a rat catcher. In the fairy tale, there was a rat infestation in Hamel, and the villagers of Hamel commissioned a rat catcher to come and eliminate the rats that were wreaking havoc in the town. When they arrived at the town of Hamel, the rat catcher took out a magic flute and blew it. The rats that heard the flute were all controlled by the rat catcher. They were all lured to the execution ground near the hills and drowned in the Wacy River. However, after the commission was completed, the villagers of Hamel broke their promise and did not pay the rat catcher, so he left angrily. On St. John and Paul's Day, which was the 26th of June, when the villagers gathered in the church to commemorate St. John and Paul, the rat catcher appeared again and played his flute. This time, the rat catchers used their flute music to lure away 130 children and took them away. From then on, whether it was the rat catcher who played the flute or the children who were lured away, there was no news of them. This was the story of the Pied Piper of Hamelin, and it was also an adaptation of a disappearance that had happened in the past. Most scholars believe that the story of the Pied Piper reflected an incident that caused a large number of children to die at a certain point in Hamelin's history. There could be two reasons for the deaths of these children. One was a natural disaster. Due to the storm, a landslide occurred in the hills, or the flooding of the Wacy River near the execution ground, causing a mudslide and causing the deaths of 130 children. The other was the Black Death. It was one of the most serious plagues in human history that spread throughout Europe in the 1340s, in the 14th century. The name of the game is the Pied Piper of Hamelin, and one of the conditions for the contestants to win is break the false inheritance and establish the true inheritance. In this box with all kinds of myths and legends as inheritances, one cannot help but wonder if you are related to that fairy tale. Noah looked directly at Pest and explained with conviction. Moreover, among your companions, there is a woman called Ratten. In German, Ratten refers to rat catchers. In addition, there is another man called Wacy. His name is reminiscent of the Wacy River. You also called that Taubing Sturm. In German, storm means storm. Rat catchers, Wacy River, storm. These three keywords all appeared in the Pied Piper of Hamelin. As for you, the black wind you used earlier should be the virus of the Black Death, right? Noah sneered. The Black Death disease is pestis in Latin. It represents the plague. In that case, it shouldn't be strange for me to guess that your name is Pestis, right? Hearing those words, Pest grew silent. However, if one were to carefully observe her, one would discover that this young demon king was looking at Noah with an interested gaze. You're called Noah, right? Pest said to Noah with a somewhat childish voice. Hey, Noah, do you want to join my community? Noah was immediately startled. After exposing Pest's true name, Noah had imagined all sorts of reactions Pest might have. However, Pest's sudden attempt to recruit him was something that Noah did not expect. That said, this was not the first time that Noah was being recruited. Thus, he would not lose his sense of propriety because of something like this. Thus, Noah said, "Give me a reason to join you all." Is there a reason? Pest smiled. That was a smile that did not resemble a young girl at all. It was a smile that gave off a malicious feeling. Then, Pest said those words. In that case, what if I were to tell you that if you don't join us, I will kill everyone in this outer court? Those words caused the smile on Noah's face to gradually disappear. It was replaced by a frightening calmness. You can give it a try. At this moment, Pest was able to clearly sense it. An aura that caused one's heart to palpitate flashed through Noah's body for an instant. Right when Pest was frowning because of this, something unexpected happened. Rumble. Accompanied by a loud bang, a huge bolt of lightning suddenly exploded in a corner. This lightning bolt caused all of the 4 million outer court disciples that were playing the Demon King's gift game to stop what they were doing. They raised their heads and looked toward the origin of the lightning and thunder. At that place, at the top of a minaret, Black Rabbit was holding up a Vajra scepter flickering with lightning. The request to activate the trial authority has been accepted. Next, the gift game, the Pied Piper of Hamelin, will be temporarily suspended. Both the participants and the organizer are to stop fighting each other and quickly prepare for negotiations. Both parties, please prepare to participate in the upcoming deliberation and decision. Chapter 13-17. Between the 3999999 outer gate and the 40000000 outer gate, the operation headquarters of the Fire Dragon birth ceremony. In the middle of a large hall that resembled a meeting room, a group of people sat across from each other across a long square table. There were a total of 3 communities present. No name, Salamandra, Grim Gimel Hamelin, the first community was represented by Benevolence and Reversal 16 Knights. The second community was represented by Shadora and Mandora. The third community was represented by Pest, Will, and Latting. The 7 people sat on both sides of the square table, forming a confrontation. As for Black Rabbit, she was presiding over this discussion as the referee. Because of the problem of seating, Noah, Jiu Yuanfei, and Haruhito Hikari stood side by side in front of the wall next to the entrance. Looking at the 3 communities that were facing each other with a heavy atmosphere, Jiu Yuan Bird lowered his voice and asked Noah, who was leaning against the wall with his eyes closed. No one knew what he was thinking about. Speaking of which, what is this discussion about? It's one of the rights granted to the game's adjudicator, who has the right to adjudicate, Noah answered without even opening his eyes. Using this right, the game can be temporarily stopped and a meeting can be held to confirm whether or not the rules of the game created based on the organizer's authority have any imperfections. Haruhito Hikari approached Noah and stood shoulder to shoulder with Noah. Similarly, he lowered his voice and asked, "There are imperfections in the rules?" In other words, there are imperfections in this game? It's precisely because we can't be certain that we need to hold a meeting, Noah corrected him. However, this can't be considered the true purpose of this discussion. Not the true purpose of this discussion? Jiu Yuanfei no longer cared about the difference between men and women. Like Haruhito Hikari, she approached Noah and stood shoulder to shoulder with Noah. What do you mean? Because this authority can forcefully stop the game of bestowment that has already started, it also has a layer of meaning to fight against the Demon King, who often launches surprise attacks. Noah explained. Like this time, one of the winning conditions for the bestowment game is to break the false inheritance and establish the true inheritance. What does this mean? We need time to think about it. If we think about it during the battle with the Demon King, then the difficulty won't just be doubled. Simply put, it's the same as calling for a halt. Haruhibu Yari nodded with some admiration. That's really a useful authority. The problem is, the other party definitely knows the significance of the existence of this authority. Noah opened his eyes and looked at the expressionless Pest. That's because the deliberations are used to confirm whether the rules of the game are incomplete. In the meeting, no matter what the outcome is, it becomes possible to reformulate the rules of the game. Jiu Fei Niao was stunned for a moment before he understood. You mean that the other party might propose rules that are beneficial to them? That's exactly what I mean. Noah's eyes flickered slightly. So, now it's just a question of who is faster. Would the participants solve the winning conditions of the game of bestowment first? Or would the organizer obtain the advantageous conditions first? Based on the upcoming meeting, the situation might completely tilt in favor of one of the two parties. This was the reason why Noah didn't take a seat. For the negotiation, it was enough to have Ren and Ni Hui 16th night. The mission Noah gave himself was to solve the winning conditions of break the false inheritance and establish the true inheritance as quickly as possible. If my guess is correct, Pest, Weezer, Rattan, and Storm should all be demons born from the inheritance of Hamel's Pied Piper. They were existences that were spiritualized by using 130 children as living sacrifices. With achievements, there would be inheritances. With inheritances, there would be spiritualities. Based on this, Noah believed that Pest, Weezer, Rattan, and Storm should all be demons that were born from Hamel's Pied Piper after obtaining their spiritualities through the achievement of causing the deaths of 130 children. As for the deaths of 130 children, there are also a lot of speculations. So, break the false inheritance and establish the true inheritance should mean that we must find out the truth behind the deaths, right? All of a sudden, Noah fell into deep thought. While Noah was deep in thought, the deliberations of the deliberations quietly began. The first to speak was Shadora. I never would have thought that Grim Gimmel still exists. Shadora looked at Pest with a sharp gaze. You shouldn't be the Demon King that originally led Grim Gimmel, right? Pest met Shadora's gaze but turned her head away disdainfully, causing a trace of anger to appear in Shadora's eyes. Feeling a little strange, 16th Nights turned her head and asked Mandela in a low voice. What's wrong? Is the community Grim Grimoire Hamon very famous? Grim Grimoire Hamon is a community led by the Demon King. Mandela closed his eyes. That demon king was a demon king that once summoned demons from over 200 magic books. He used demons as the lifeline of the community. However, after that demon king lost to a certain community in a game of grace, he should have passed away. I see, 16 knights nodded in understanding. Is that why you think that the spotted lowly isn't the demon king that originally led Grim Gimmel? Noah, who was leaning against the wall, also heard this. He more or less came to a realization. If that was the case, perhaps Pest, Weezer, Rattan and Storm were all demons summoned by that demon king from the Pied Piper of Hamel. Wait. Noah suddenly had a thought. Are all four of them really the demon king? This was a question that was only natural. Weezer and Rattan aside, Pest and Storm were not existences that only appeared in the Pied Piper of Hamel. What if Pest and Storm were not demons summoned from the Pied Piper of Hamel? Then these two people have nothing to do with the legacy of the Pied Piper of Hamel. Noah's mind was filled with countless thoughts. If that's the case, the meaning of break the false legacy and establish the true legacy is clear. No. He didn't just understand this question. If that was the case, the rest of the questions would be answered as well. The true nature of this bestowment game organized by Pest gradually took shape in Noah's mind. And at this moment, the negotiation began. Let me make this clear. There are no flaws in the rules of the game this time. Pest spoke with a resolute and decisive tone. As the organizer of this game, we are currently being wronged. And you all have interfered with the sacred game. I demand compensation. Just as Noah expected, Pest planned to change the rules of the game to her advantage during the meeting. Ren, who was well aware of this, forced himself to calm down and raised his objection in a low voice. But, Lord White Yiksha, who was appointed as the leader of the game, was sealed by an unknown method. Is that still considered proper behavior? Of course. Including White Yiksha's seal, there are no flaws in the rules of the game this time, Pest said in an extremely calm manner. Didn't you say that you two's rabbit ears are connected to the core of the box court? Even if I lie, I will be immediately exposed, right? Everyone was speechless. Chapter 13:18. In the box, as long as it was a question related to the game, the central hub of the box would be able to provide an answer. It was precisely because of this that you two, who was connected to the central hub of the box, became so persuasive. If there were truly loopholes in the rules of the game of grace that Pest used, Black Rabbit, who was connected to the central hub of the box, would be able to obtain the truth from there. Even though Pest clearly knew this, she still had a fearless appearance. This proved that there were indeed no flaws in the rules of the game. However, even if this was the case, Black Rabbit still had to follow the procedure. After all, Black Rabbit's authority to make a decision did not mean that there was a problem with the rules of the game. Instead, when fighting against the Demon King, using this authority to stall for time was of the utmost importance. What they needed to do next was to see how far they would be able to negotiate with Pest during the meeting. Due to the hostile relationship between the two sides, they naturally had to do their best to make the rules less favorable to the Demon King's side. Thinking like this, Black Rabbit could only choose to believe in Reverse 16 Knights and Ren's negotiation ability. He closed his eyes and his long rabbit ears began to tremble. After a long time, Black Rabbit opened his eyes. As expected, he smiled bitterly and said, "We have received the central hub of the box. I've already received the reply from the central command of the Hakata. The game this time indeed has no flaws or irregularities. Lord White Yiksha's seal is also formed using proper methods." Reverse 16 Knights, Ren, Shadora, Mandela and the others immediately grew silent. That is a natural result, Pest said in an extremely calm manner. In that case, the rules will remain as they are. I wish to discuss the date when the game will restart. Discuss the date? Everyone was stunned. Discuss the date? In other words, Pest did not plan to restart the game immediately. What kind of joke was this? Black Rabbit had made a decision to make a decision in order to stall for time. For Pest to take the initiative to not restart the game immediately, wasn't that the same as giving the competitors time to solve the puzzle? Could it be that Pest was not afraid of the game's victory condition being solved? Before the crowd of competitors, Pest acted as if she didn't know what she had just said. Slowly, she opened her mouth to speak. She slowly said, "I wish to ask the referee, what is the slowest possible time for the game to restart?" Slowest? Black Rabbit said with a confused expression. Most likely, it can be delayed to a month from now. Is that so? Pest suddenly smiled. Then in a month, however, before Pest could finish her words, 16 Knights Reversal and Ren spoke at the same time. Wait. Please wait. The sudden interruption stunned Black Rabbit, Shadora, Mandela, and the others. What's wrong? Pest raised her eyes slightly and looked at 16 Knights and Ren. Don't you want time? I'll give it to you, all right? Hearing this, 16 Knights and Ren looked at each other. After receiving 16 Knights' signal, Ren nodded and summoned his courage to look at Pest. According to the information provided by the members of our community, you should be the Demon King Pestis who controls the Black Death, right? That's right, Pest glanced in Noah's direction and calmly nodded. Is there a problem? Of course, Ren couldn't help but become serious. Speaking of the Black Death, it is the most terrifying plague of the 14th century. Since you are the Demon King who controls the Black Death, it should be a very simple matter for you to have the Black Death enter everyone's bodies, right? Everyone was shocked. If that was truly the case, then Pest's purpose in deliberately delaying the restart of the game was clear. One must know that the Black Death's incubation period was at least 2 days. If they were to wait until a month from now to restart the game, then all the people here would have died from the corrosion of the Black Death's virus. If that was the case, not only would Pest be able to win the game effortlessly, but all the people here would also die. Thinking of this, everyone's expressions became ugly. You've truly made a neither good nor bad move, Speckled Lowly, 16 Knights Reversal said with a mocking tone. Are you not worried that we will be able to solve the puzzle of the victory condition within a month and, by luck, allow one of us to survive and clear the game 1 month from now? If it was before the trial authority was activated, then that might be possible. A malicious smile appeared on Pest's face. However, now that the trial authority has been activated, that is no longer possible. What? 16 Knights Reversal frowned as he looked at Black Rabbit. What's going on? In an ordinary bestowment game, if there is more than one victory condition, then one will only need to complete one of the victory conditions to clear the game. Black Rabbit bit his lips because of the unexpected unfavorable situation. However, once the trial authority is activated, the rules will be changed. Miss Pest is completely capable of demanding that all the victory conditions be met. 16 Knights Reversal's expression sunk. This time around, there were 2 victory conditions for the participants. One was to defeat the game leader of the organizer. The other was to break the false inheritance and establish the true inheritance. In other words, if one wanted to complete all the victory conditions, in addition to solving the puzzle of the second victory condition, one would also need to defeat Pest 1 month from now. After being tormented by the Black Death for an entire month, even if one didn't die, one would be left with half a life. By the way, although our community has yet to establish a foothold, according to our evaluation, even I can reach the 5-digit level, Pest mocked with a tone as if victory was already in her grasp. Even so, you all still dare to claim that you have a method to defeat me after being tormented by the Black Death for an entire month? Everyone was rendered speechless for a moment. Right at this moment, an indifferent voice sounded. Of course. This voice was filled with a matter-of-fact tone. 16 Knights Reversal, Ren, Sandora, Mandela and even Black Rabbit became spirited. They turned around and looked toward the source of the voice. Will and Ladding were shocked. They also looked toward the source of the voice. As for Pest, her eyes flickered with a dangerous glint. She looked toward the entrance. There, Noah looked up and said, "Don't you dare say that. There is no longer any possibility of us losing this game. Those words caused the expressions of everyone present to change. However, while the participants had pleasantly surprised expressions, the organizers had gloomy and irritable expressions. This was especially true for Pest. She looked at Noah with an extremely displeased expression. "I truly wish to ask you this. Why are you so confident?" "There are 3 reasons." Under the gazes of everyone present, Noah raised 3 fingers before Pest. 1. Even if everyone else were to die from the Black Death, nothing would happen to me. To explain it in terms that you all can understand, it is because I was born with the gift of being unaffected by any negative energy. This includes viruses and curses. 1 month from now, I will still be able to participate in the competition. 2. I've solved all the puzzles of the second victory condition in this game of grace. 3. You, the Demon King of the Black Death, are no match for me. When these 3 sentences resounded throughout the entire hall, the atmosphere of the entire space became hostile. Rage appeared on Wells and Ladding's faces. They abruptly stood up from their seats. Provoked by this, Black Rabbit, Shadora, Mandela and the others also stood up. Only Pest stared fixedly at Noah. Finally, a cold glint appeared in her eyes. That was the expression of Pest's killing intent toward Noah. Originally, Pest did not display any true killing intent toward anyone. The reason for that was very simple. It was because only Pest, Wells and Ladding remained in the Grim Grimoire Hamon. As the leader of the community, one of the reasons why Pest started this game of grace was to have talented individuals join her community. That was why the term, subduing, was used as the victory condition for this game of grace. After Noah displayed sufficient talent, Pest extended an olive branch to Noah. Because of that, Pest did not display any killing intent toward anyone. However, it was different now. Chapter 13:19. There's no possibility of losing. At first glance, this sentence sounded like a boast. However, if one connected the 3 reasons Noah mentioned earlier and the 2 victory conditions for the game of grace that Pest had organized using her authority as the organizer, one could understand why Noah would say those words. Pest had 3 main advantages. First, she could change the rules of the game through the discussion and delay the start of the game to 1 month later. Second, she could also change the rules through the discussion and make it so that 2 victory conditions had to be met in order to clear the game. Third, she could inject the Black Death virus into the bodies of the participants, making it so that none of the participants could guarantee that they would be able to survive 1 month later and clear the restart of the game. Under such circumstances, even if the puzzle of the second victory condition was solved, the participants here would not be able to guarantee that they would be able to survive until 1 month later and continue participating in the game. Even if they were able to survive, they would only be able to fulfill the second victory condition. After being tormented by the Black Death to the point where they were half dead, defeating the Demon King after 1 month was no longer a question of whether it was difficult or not. Instead, it was a question of whether it was realistic. After all, the incubation period of the Black Death was only 2 short days. 1 month was more than enough time for everyone here to die. Even if they were able to survive, it would already be a miracle if even one of them could survive until 1 month later. That was why Pest was so certain of her victory. Originally, the discussion and resolution was to buy time for the participants to solve the puzzle of the Demon King game. However, Pest's infusion of the Black Death virus into the participants during the game had completely turned the situation around. However, Noah's existence had completely shattered Pest's 3 advantages. That was because even if everyone here were to die from the Black Death, nothing would happen to Noah. He would still be able to participate in the game 1 month later. If Noah had truly solved the puzzle of the second victory condition of this game of grace, then 1 month later, Noah would be able to easily complete one of the 2 victory conditions. As for the remaining victory condition, Noah had also mentioned that he would not be tormented by the Black Death virus. Pest was no match for him. Such resolute and decisive words caused the atmosphere of the entire space to change completely. As for Pest, she was staring at Noah with an extremely heavy gaze. Her gaze gave off a deep pressure. The pressure that only belonged to the Demon King made Joyuen Osaka and Hiroi Yayoi feel suffocated. As for Shadora, Mandela, and Ren, their backs were drenched in cold sweat. Among all the people present, only 16 knights maintained a calm expression. He looked at Noah and exclaimed in surprise. "You've solved the puzzle? I think you should have noticed it too, right?" Noah asked instead of answering. The phrase, "break the false inheritance and establish the true inheritance," itself. Hearing Noah's words, everyone was stunned. "I only noticed a part of it." 16 knights shrugged. After all, the word shatter in the sentence shatter the fake inheritance makes one feel that the inheritance here is not some kind of real item, so it can be used to shatter it. After saying those words, 16 knights suddenly smiled. For example, the stained glass that was displayed together with the inscription that recorded the disappearance of 130 children in Hamiltown. Hearing those words, Will and Ladding's expressions changed slightly. It also caused the eyes of Ren, Shadora, Mandela, and the other participants to light up. In this fire dragon's birth ceremony, many artworks were displayed as well. It would not be strange at all if there were stained glass among these artworks. Since it was stained glass, the stained glass would definitely not have the same stained glass. Ren immediately asked after noticing this. In other words, the phrase, "break the false inheritance and establish the true inheritance," means that we have to find out which stained glass is real and which stained glass is fake. Correct, 16 knights snapped his fingers. Then, he spread his hands helplessly. "It's just that I haven't determined which piece of stained glass is real and which is fake. Before the meeting, I did some research and found out that there are more than 100 pieces of stained glass that will be displayed at the fire dragon's birth ceremony." More than 100 stained glass. Everyone looked at each other. However, soon, 16 knights put on his arrogant smile again. He raised his eyebrows and looked at Noah. "Since you said that you have solved the riddle, it means that you already know how to distinguish the stained glass from the fake ones, right?" "I only noticed it at the end." Noah smiled bitterly. "Because you first noticed the word shatter, but I noticed the word inheritance first." In the world of the box, there were all kinds of myths and legends. They were the inheritances of the famous Asura gods and Buddhas. Once, in the world of the God Slayer, Noah was familiar with almost all the myths and legends in order to make the clone of the warrior able to be used against any god at any time. So, it was different from 16 knights. After realizing that Pest and the others might not all come from the fairy tale, The Piper of Hamel, Noah, who was familiar with all kinds of myths and legends, including fairy tales, noticed that something was wrong. If you think about it carefully, it's actually very easy to understand. Noah looked straight at Pest, who was silent. Undoubtedly, in the real Hamiltown, the inscription that recorded the disappearance of 130 children was dated to 1284. However, the Black Death started to spread after 1350. The reason why it became the cause of the deaths of those children was because the Black Death after the 14th century was made into the fairy tale, The Piper of Hamel. After hearing Noah's words, everyone was shocked. In other words, the period when the Black Death was at its peak did not match the era recorded in the inscription of Hamiltown. Now that I think about it, the Black Death, that is, you, Pestis, shouldn't be a demon summoned from the Pied Piper of Hamel. Noah said to Pest, who had a gloomy expression. Then, he looked at Will and Ladding, who had a gloomy expression on their faces. If that's the case, I can't help but suspect that the others might be the real deal. In the original inheritance and inscription, the character, the Piper who manipulates rats, did not appear. It was only after the 1500s, when the Black Death reached its peak, that the rats and the Piper who manipulates rats appeared in The Piper of Hamel. In other words, Ratton the Rat Catcher is also a fake. Ladding's expression immediately turned ugly. The storm after that seems to be the real deal. However, the storm is a natural disaster that can appear anywhere. It has nothing to do with the inheritance of The Piper of Hamel. Noah glanced at Will. Therefore, among the four of you, only Weezer, who is also the Weezer River, fits the description of the original The Piper of Hamel. After all, the inscription of Hamiltown states that vanish near the hills. The hills here refer to the hills adjacent to the Weser River. TSK. Will was speechless. 16 nights the reverse's eyes grew brighter and brighter. In the end, he finally revealed a smile. So that's how it is. Everything makes sense now. As long as the images of the rats, the Black Death, and the storm are fake in the stained glass, they should be shattered. Among the remaining stained glass, there should only be one stained glass that doesn't have these three elements. As long as we can find it, we will be able to solve the riddle of breaking the fake inheritance and establishing the real inheritance. 16 nights the reverse laughed loudly. Well done, young man. While 16 nights the reverse laughed loudly, Joe-yuki, Hiroyuki, Ren, Shadora, Mandela, and the others revealed joyful expressions. As for Pest, Will, Ladding and the others, they all entered a state of complete silence. Chapter 13:20. The puzzle had been solved. However, that was understandable. The reason for that was because Pest had encountered two true monsters in this game of grace. One was Noah, who had to travel through various unfamiliar worlds. In order to understand the backgrounds of various worlds and survive in these worlds, he placed great importance on information. That was why he had read all kinds of books. The other was an ordinary human. However, he possessed an extremely terrifying talent. Not only was he born with a gift that not even the Asura gods and Buddhas could match, but he was also surprisingly smart, the 16 Nights of Reversal. Under such circumstances, even if only one of them was present, it would only be a matter of time before they unraveled the truth behind the inheritance of the Piper of Hamel. Not to mention, both of them were present. Combining the inscriptions recorded in the real Hamiltown and the various knowledge from the Grimm's fairy tales, it was only a matter of time before the puzzle of Pest's game was solved. Of course, if they only solved one of the game's victory conditions, they would not be able to obtain victory. Even if you two solved the puzzle, so what? Pest's delicate face did not waver in the slightest. She merely looked at Noah, who was telling them the answer to the puzzle without any hesitation. She spoke in an extremely calm manner. Right now, we are still in the process of deliberating. Changing the rules is still feasible. My game does not have any flaws. Yet, you all forcefully stopped it. Thus, I am completely capable of requesting to change the rules of the game. As long as we delay the game to a month later, everyone here will die. Pest looked at Noah with an expression filled with displeasure. At that time, even if you are the only one who is fine, what can you do? What can I do? Noah curled his lips into a smile. His pitch-black eyes looked straight at Pest. Didn't I say it already? You are no match for me. After Noah announced the answer to the puzzle, the atmosphere that had turned hostile was successfully ignited by these words. Don't be too arrogant, stinking brat. Wilhelm's entire body was emitting a berserk anger. Do you think you can defeat the Demon King alone? That's why I hate humans. All of them are so arrogant. Compared to humans who don't know what's good for them, those rats are much cuter. La Ting had a flirtatious smile on her face, but there was no trace of a smile in her eyes. Right? Master. However, Pest simply ignored Ladding's question. Instead, she looked to Noah with an expressionless face. After a while, she suddenly smiled. Undoubtedly, that smile looked quite cute, but it gave people a creepy feeling. With such a smile on her face, Pest lightly opened her mouth. Are you serious? Noah did not reply. He merely shot a glance at Pest. There was no change in his expression at all. Just like that, Noah and Pest looked at each other as if there was no one else present. This caused the entire space to be filled with a pressure that caused one's heart to contract. Seeing Noah confronting the Demon King without showing any signs of weakness, Kiyoshi, Haruhibiari, Ren, Shadora, and Mandela all had a drop of sweat rolling down their cheeks. As they clearly knew what kind of offensive gifts Noah possessed, they naturally did not think that Noah was boasting. Rather, it would be better to say that Noah possessed many divine spark-grade weapons. Even Mandela gave him a high evaluation of being able to rank in the 4 digits. Naturally, no one felt that Noah would lose to a demon king with 5 digits. However, the problem was that Pest was not merely a demon king with 5 digits. She was also an existence that controlled the Black Death. In this outer sect, who knew how many people had been injected with the Black Death virus by this demon king, and their lives were hanging by their necks. Even if Noah was able to defeat Pest in a month's time, the people here would most likely all be dead by then. If that was the case, what was the point? It was impossible for Noah not to understand this. However, Noah had still provoked Pest to such an extent. He had even solved the game's riddle right in front of her. Wasn't this the same as deliberately angering her? Once the enemy was completely angered, there would be no room for negotiation. It was really possible that Pest would be forced to delay the start of the game to a month's time. At that time, it would truly be over. Thinking up to this point, everyone grew anxious. There was only one person who could remain calm. That person was none other than 16 Knights. The eyes of 16 Knights, who had been staring at Noah all this time, flickered with anticipation. Let me see what you're planning to do, little brother. On the other side, as Pest looked at the composed Noah, uneasiness emerged in her heart. Could it be that this man truly has a way to defeat me? It wasn't that Pest was not confident. In this 4 million outer court, Pest was extremely confident. Apart from White Yiksha, there was no one else who could defeat her. However, Noah was able to solve the puzzle of Pest's game in an extremely straightforward manner. Furthermore, he unhesitatingly announced the answer to the puzzle while the discussion was still going on, when it was possible to change the rules. This proved that his confidence was not a bluff. This caused Pest to feel uneasy. Exactly what was this man planning to do? No matter what, eliminating the unfavorable conditions was of the utmost importance. As she thought of this, Pest suddenly spoke to Black Rabbit. Referee, I request for a change in the rules. The game will still be restarted in a month's time. As for the victory condition, apart from the first victory condition, the second victory condition will be changed to defeat all of my subordinates. Sure enough. After the riddle was announced, the worst thing happened. Just as everyone's expressions turned ugly, Noah smiled faintly. Why go through so much trouble? This time, it was Pest's turn to be stunned. Under such circumstances, Noah turned around and looked at Pest. Since the game no longer requires a riddle, we might as well change them all. After saying those words, Noah waved his hand. A map spread open on the table. That was the map of the entire 4 million outer court stage area during the Fire Dragon Birth Festival. These 4 places are the 4 arenas used to host the Game of Grace during the Fire Dragon Birth Festival. Noah pointed to the 4 small dots at the 4 corners of the map and said to Shadora. Shadora, is it possible to vacate these 4 arenas and let the people from Grim Gimmelhammer use them? Shadora was completely stunned. Not to mention Shadora, even the others had a confused expression on their faces. Pest furrowed her brows and coldly looked at Noah. What are you trying to say? What I'm trying to say is, since you want to make the victory condition so that we must defeat all of you, why don't you just change the game's content completely? Noah narrowed his eyes and smiled faintly. The game will be changed to a one-on-one battle. The 4 people from your community will each occupy one of the arenas. 3 days later, the game will begin. Similarly, we can only send out 4 people to participate in the battle. Each of us will randomly choose an arena and conduct 4 versus 4 individual battles. If all of us participants win all 4 individual battles, the game will be cleared. Noah looked straight at Pest. If you lose one of the 4 individual battles, it will be considered your victory. Wah! Everyone immediately sucked in a mouthful of cold air. You. Pest was also astonished. Are you serious? Of course I'm serious. For the first time, Noah revealed a serious expression. However, I request that you retrieve all of the Black Death virus you injected into the arena. Hearing this, everyone present finally understood Noah's intention. Pest's eyes flickered slightly. However, an extremely displeased expression appeared on her face. However, immediately after, Pest relaxed her expression. I understand. Pest stood up and revealed a smile filled with anger and malice toward Noah. I swear, I will definitely make you my toy. After saying those words, a black wind suddenly swept forth with Pest as the center. When the black wind dissipated, Pest and the others had also disappeared without a trace. Only a pitch-black contract remained. It floated down from midair. Chapter 13:21. Bestowment Game Name, Demon King's Arena Battle. Participant List, 3999999 Outer Sect and 4000000 Outer Sect Realm Wall Stage Area are a community of all participants and organizers. Designated Game Leaders, Sun's Traveler, Stars White Yiksha. Since they are unable to participate in the battle, they are forbidden to interact with them during the interruption of the game. The organizer's victory condition: successfully defend one of the 4 arenas. Contestants' victory condition: successfully win all 4 arenas. Interruption of the game: 3 days. Before the game restarts, both sides are not allowed to attack each other. The organizer's first prohibition: multiple ring defenders appearing in the same ring. Organizer Prohibition 2: injecting the Black Death virus into the participants' bodies. Participant Prohibition 1: leaving the game area, the stage area, during the interruption of the game. Participant Prohibition 2: leaving the area of free movement during the interruption of the game. The area is limited to 500 square meters around the headquarters of the Fire Dragon's birth sacrificial ceremony. Participant Prohibition 3: when the game restarts, more than 4 participants will appear. Participant Prohibition 4: multiple participants attempting to conquer the same arena. Both sides Prohibition 1: before and after the game restarts, both sides are to investigate the arena defenders and attackers. Both sides Prohibition 2: after the game restarts, both sides are to change the arena defenders and attackers. Oath: respecting the above content, based on the honor, flag, and organizer's authority, this bestowment game will be held. Grim Grimoire Hamon, Seal. As soon as Grim Grimoire Hamon's party disappeared from the conference room, the contents of the pitch-black contract that fell from the sky were imprinted in everyone's eyes. Seeing that even the name of the bestowment game had been completely changed, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. However, they also felt a heavy feeling in their hearts. They breathed a sigh of relief because they no longer had to worry about someone dying from the Black Death virus. They felt heavy because of the unfavorable situation of this new game. With the Demon King as the opponent, only 4 people can be dispatched. Mandela clenched his fists and said helplessly, I really don't know what kind of joke this is. Although Pest was only a 5-digit Demon King and Salamandra was also a 5-digit Demon King, the significance of the two was completely different. On the other hand, it was based on one's own ability. On the other hand, it was the level obtained from the abilities of everyone in the community. The former was able to reach this level purely because of their strength. The latter, on the other hand, was a test of the independence of the community, the ability of the organizer, the individual strength of each member, and many other factors. In other words, it was simply impossible to select someone from Salamandra that could match Pest even if both of them were in the 5 digits. Even if the entire Salamandra were to fight against Pest alone, it was still possible for them to be completely wiped out. Even if they won, they would have to rely on human lives to achieve victory. Under such circumstances, they could only send out 4 people. It was almost like a joke. Furthermore, apart from the Demon Queen Pest, there were also Vasil, Lading, and Strom, the 3 demons, by Pest's side. In a situation where they could only fight one-on-one, even if 3 of them were able to defeat Pest's subordinates, would the remaining person be able to defeat a 5-digit Demon King by himself? Perhaps Noah and 16 knights would be able to. However, that was only if they chose the arena that Pest was defending. As for which arena Pest's group of 4 would choose to defend, that was something that no one knew at all. After the game began, the 4 participants could only randomly choose an arena to attack. Furthermore, they were not allowed to change the arena they were attacking. In other words, if they were to choose the wrong arena and allow someone other than Noah and 16 Knights to fight against Pest, they would definitely be finished. If they were to be defeated by Pest, they would not be able to obtain victory in all 4 arenas. The situation was indeed very unfavorable for them. However, no matter how unfavorable it was still better than everyone dying from the Black Death 1 month later. Furthermore, it was not like there was no hope for victory. Furthermore, there was another benefit to this. That is, apart from the 4 competitors, Pest's group would not be able to harm anyone other than the 4 competitors during the duration of the game. As the result of their negotiation, this could undoubtedly be considered a great achievement. The problem is, which 4 participants should we choose? The corners of 16 Knights' mouth rose as he looked at the surrounding people. Judging from the current situation, little brother and I must participate in order to guarantee that we will have the greatest chance of victory against that spotted lowly. As for the remaining 2, who should we choose? Hearing those words, Jiu Yuao and Hiroi Kibuya raised their brows and took a step forward. As problematic children with the same nature as 16 Knights, it was only natural that the extremely prideful Jiu Yuao and the extremely competitive Hiroi Kibuya would not give up on the opportunity to participate. However, before Jiu Yuao and Hiroi Kibuya could recommend themselves, Mandela spoke with an unquestionable tone. Shadora must participate. Shadora was stunned. On the other hand, Mandela continued to speak energetically. As the guardian of order, the ruler of the Northern District, if Shadora chooses to protect herself in the Demon King's game, she will be ridiculed by everyone and might even be impeached. We, Salamandra, will not allow such a thing to happen. However, as soon as he finished speaking, Noah raised his head and looked at Mandela. That's true. If Shadora doesn't participate, you won't be able to achieve your goal. Mandela's expression froze on his face. Objective? The rest of the people were at a loss. Goal? What goal? Goal? The smile on 16 Knights' face slowly disappeared. He put his hands into his pockets and casually spoke. Are you referring to the fact that Salamander herself is the one who lured the Demon King here? Everyone's expressions froze when they heard those words. This was especially true for Shadora. The dignified look that she had been trying to put on had completely disappeared, and it was replaced by a look of shock. What's there to be shocked about? You can figure it out if you think about it carefully, right? 16 Knights said uninterestedly. Those guys used more than 100 pieces of stained glass as the key to the second victory condition of the original game. With so many pieces of stained glass, they definitely have to display the name of the community. Otherwise, how can they appear in the art and crafts exhibition? And if the spotted lowly displayed the name of a community that was once led by the Demon King, how could the stained glass still appear here? 16 Knights looked at Mandela with a half-smile. Unless the organizer purposely let it go. Isn't that right? Mandela's eyes began to shake violently. Everyone understood what was going on. The main culprit who lured the Demon King to the Fire Dragon's birth ceremony was Salamandra. Brother Mandela. Shadora looked at Mandela in disbelief. Is this true? Shadora obviously didn't know about this at all. Why? Why are you doing this? Black Rabbit shouted almost instinctively. As a member of the community led by the ruler of the hierarchy, you are also the protector of order. How dare you collude with the Demon King who is disrupting order? Mandela was strangely angered by Black Rabbit's words. I won't collude with the Demon King. That's right, you didn't collude with the Demon King, Noah said calmly. You just want Shadora to defeat the Demon King and tell the other rulers and citizens in the Northern District who look down on Shadora because of her young age that even though Shadora is young, she is still one of the rulers who can protect the Northern District and build up her reputation, right? Noah looked at Mandela with an extremely cold gaze. It's just that your actions make me very unhappy. Chapter 1322. In the box court, the Demon King was called a natural disaster. Because once the Demon King used his authority as the organizer to forcefully pull people into his game of gifts, it was simply a disguised form of robbery and plunder. For example, No Name, once they were defeated in the game of gifts with the Demon King, the price was simply frightening. The flag and name that symbolized the community were taken away. The companions that they spent all their time with were taken away. The wealth that had been accumulated over the years was taken away. Even the vitality of the land in the community was taken away. This kind of consequence was only one step away from completely destroying the community. And the predecessor of No Name was a community that dominated the entire Eastern District, but it was destroyed to this extent by the Demon King. Such a terrible consequence perfectly displayed the word natural disaster. Now, Mandela took the initiative to bring such a natural disaster over. Even if the Demon King this time is not as terrible as the one who destroyed No Name, it is only a 5-digit number, but for the residents of the lower class, it is still a natural disaster. Noah looked at Mandela with an extremely cold gaze. In order to get the leader of the community out of the embarrassing situation of being looked down upon and distrusted, your salamandra is willing to sacrifice the people of the lower class? As expected of a community that can abandon its allies in distress without hesitation? I won't let that happen. Mandela clenched his fists and growled. Even if I have to sacrifice my life. We, Salamandra, will also protect the residents of the lower class in the hands of the Demon King. As soon as his voice fell, a figure suddenly rushed in front of Mandela. While Mandela was caught off guard, he suddenly stretched out his hand, grabbed Mandela's collar, and pulled Mandela's entire body up. What makes you say that? Tightly grabbing Mandela's collar, Noah said with a furious face. Protect the residents of the lower class even if you have to sacrifice your life? I'm afraid that all the residents of this 4 million outer sect will die in the hands of the Demon King along with your salamander. Mandela's expression changed. This time, it's fortunate that 16th Night and I were able to take the initiative and stop Pest. If the two of us didn't stop Pest, as long as she released the Black Death virus into the town, would your salamandra be able to suffer for the sake of those citizens? Noah's hand grew stronger and stronger. Or do you think that as long as you are willing to sacrifice your life, you can let the innocent residents suffer with no qualms? Mandela was speechless. He could only grit his teeth and turn his head away. He could not even meet Noah's gaze. However, after a while, Mandela turned his head back and met Noah's gaze with a determined expression. I was the one who made this decision. Shadora doesn't know about this at all. As long as you can let Shadora appear in the game in 3 days, I'm willing to accept any punishment. Brother Mandela. Shadora bit her lip, looking sad. This was because Shadora knew that Mandela was doing this for her sake. Because of her young age, Shadora was looked down upon by the other rulers of the social class. She was even viewed as an enemy by them. She did not have any dignity at all. Similarly, because of her young age, the residents of the Northern District would never believe that an 11-year-old girl could protect their personal safety as the guardian of order and maintain order in the entire Northern District. In order to let this Shadora stand out and be recognized by others as the ruler of the social class, Mandela did not hesitate to lure the Demon King over. As long as she could defeat the Demon King in the Demon King's gift game, all the suspicions against Shadora would be reduced by more than half, if not all, of them. Therefore, all of this was for Shadora. As an 11-year-old child, Shadora almost wanted to cry. For her, her brother had become a sinner. However, Shadora held back her tears. She bit her lip and said in a trembling voice, Please let me participate in the game in 3 days, yes. Shadora wanted to atone for her sins with Mandela, which meant that she would be punished. However, if she did that, Mandela would not be able to fulfill what he had done regardless of the consequences. In order to live up to her brother's expectations, Shadora chose not to bear the consequences but to bear the results. The results of Mandela's teachings. The determination of the siblings made the anger in the hearts of Black Rabbit, Joyu and Osaka, and Yaito gradually dissipate. Even Noah's anger was slowly fading away. The anger on his face was gradually replaced by displeasure. Recalling all the disputes he encountered in the world of the Dark Bullet, Noah looked at Mandela coldly. Listen carefully. The thing I hate the most is to let things like political power involve innocent people. After that, Noah pushed Mandela away forcefully, causing Mandela to stumble back involuntarily. Don't do it again. With that, Noah turned around, pushed open the door of the meeting room, and left. The room was dead silent. The one who broke the silence was 16 Knights Reverse. Out of the 4 contestants, Salamandra will take 1, and No Name will take the remaining 3. 16 Knights Reverse scratched his head and said with a bored expression. Is there a problem? Yes. Mandela tidied up his messy clothes and closed his eyes. No problem. Although a community without a flag and no name took up 3/4 of the contestants in the Demon King game, it was not a peaceful game worth participating in. You could lose your life at any time. Under such circumstances, they naturally had to choose the 4 most capable contestants. Furthermore, Salamandra was famous for not having a single elite. In terms of individual combat power, other than Shadora, who obtained the dragon horn of the first leader of Salamandra, no one in Salamandra could fight with the main members of No Name. The first leader of Salamandra was one of the strongest species, the Star Sea Dragon King. The dragon horn left behind by the Star Sea Dragon King carried a huge amount of spiritual power. Although Shadora, who inherited the dragon horn, was not mature yet, with the dragon horn of the Star Sea Dragon King, her combat power was above Jiyuki Asaka and Kazuhito Masaaki. She could even barely catch up to Black Rabbit, who was a noble of Hakata and had 4 gifted weapons that simulated divinity. Therefore, it was enough to give 1 spot to Shadora. As long as Shadora could participate in the Demon King game, then after defeating the Demon King, Shadora would be able to gain reputation and trust, and take a big step forward on the path to becoming a leader. If she failed, then Salamandra would be taken away by the Demon King who controlled the Black Death. If she won, she would get what she wanted. If she lost, she would be doomed. It was with this kind of determination that Mandela attracted the Demon King. Although this was extremely unfair to the innocent people and Shadora, who was only 11 years old and could not bear such a huge burden. However, this was something that would happen sooner or later. As long as she is a leader, then she will have to fight the Demon King sooner or later. Mandela said with an emotionless voice. If she can't even pass this level of test, then Shadora will die in the hands of the Demon King sooner or later. Then it is better to go all out now. If she can win, then it can be considered as accumulating experience. Shadora lowered her head and fell silent, but her eyes were filled with determination. From this moment onwards, this child had truly grown up, and also had some self-awareness as a leader of the social class. Of course, that was Salamandra's problem. As an outsider, as well as an ally that was once abandoned, the people from No Name had no right to interrupt. Just like that, there were only 3 days left before the battle with the Demon King. Chapter 1323. The next day. In order to announce that the rules of the Demon King's gift game had been greatly changed, Salamandra, as the organizer of the Fire Dragon's Birth Festival and one of the rulers of the North District, gathered all the communities that had been dragged into the game. Because they didn't have a flag or a name, the members of No Name didn't appear. With Noah as the leader, Black Rabbit, Joyuen Flying Bird, Kasuga Hikari, 16 Knights Reversal, and Ren as companions, the members of No Name were hiding in the corridor outside the hall. They leaned against the wall and listened to the movements in the hall. When Shadora explained the rules and contents of the Demon King's gift game and announced that No Name would take 3 out of the 4 contestants, the entire hall was filled with cheers that shook the air. Let No Name send out 3 contestants. This is a joke, right? How can No Name be trusted? Isn't this too much? Similar noises and sounds of disbelief reverberated throughout the entire hall. That was natural. Although the content of the game had been completely changed, the content of the previous game had not been changed. The people here still remembered it clearly. Undoubtedly, it was written that as the organizer, the Demon King's party's victory condition was to subdue or kill all the community members here. In other words, that was the price to pay for losing in the Demon King's gift game. If they were defeated in this game of grace, then all the communities here would either become subordinates of the Demon King or lose their lives. Under such circumstances, among the participants of the game that decided their fates, 3 out of 4 of them were communities that didn't have a flag or a name and were at the lowest of the lowest in the hall. That wasn't the level of uneasiness, but the level of despair and fear. All of a sudden, voices of opposition spread out, causing the ground of the fire dragon's birth ceremony to tremble slightly. Seeing this situation, Salamandra only glanced at Mandela. Mandela took a step forward and announced with an unimaginable pressure. If any of you think you can win against a 5-digit Demon King in a one-on-one battle, then stand out. With that one sentence, the huge waves of sound in the hall disappeared without a trace. The members of the community were left speechless. They even lowered their heads, unable to say a word. After observing up to this point, Noah understood. These people wouldn't have any more objections. Then, there's only one question left. 16 Knights smiled at Noah. Of the remaining contestant, who should we choose? In order to guarantee victory against Pest, Noah and 16 Knights, who possessed the greatest battle prowess, would definitely be sent out. Thus, 2 out of the 4 contestants were decided. Then, Salamandra, who had to stand out as the ruler of the hierarchy, would take one of the contestants. As for the remaining contestant, how should he choose one of the members of no name? Although Black Rabbit wants to participate, as the holder of judgment authority, he is unable to freely participate in the bestowment game. Black Rabbit's long rabbit ears drooped down as he spoke in a dispirited manner. Thus, I can only rely on you all. If Black Rabbit could participate, then the remaining contestant would undoubtedly be Black Rabbit's. Black Rabbit possessed 4 bestowment tools that simulated godheads. As Sakra's subordinate, Black Rabbit's strength was also in existence that no one in the lower hierarchy could match. Conservatively speaking, Black Rabbit would be a 5-digit Demon King. Unfortunately, as the holder of judgment authority, Black Rabbit was unable to freely participate in the bestowment game. Is there no way for Lady Letitia to participate? Ren looked at Noah. Although she has already lost her godhead and has less than a tenth of her strength remaining, as an original Demon King, Lady Letitia's strength is much stronger than ordinary people. If Lady Letitia were to participate in the bestowment game, our chances of victory would increase by a lot, right? Letitia is my personal bestowment game. Even if she were to participate, she would be counted as one contestant with me. She would also be able to challenge the same arena. Noah shook his head. Thus, it won't work. Then, that silver-haired lowly maid called Astrid also won't be able to participate, right? In verse 16 Knights folded his arms and looked to the side. As expected, the remaining contestant should be chosen from Milady and Haruhito, right? You're quite smart. Jiyoshi nodded in satisfaction, then looked at Hiroi Buyao. Haruhito-san, what do you think? However, facing Jiyoyo's question, Haruhito seemed to be a little absent-minded. Everyone looked at Haruhibu Yaichi strangely. Haruhito-san? Jiyoyo said with some doubt. What's wrong with you? Haruhito didn't react to Jiyoyo's words, but still stood there absent-mindedly. Noah, who felt that something was wrong, frowned. Then, Noah realized. Haruhito's situation seemed to be a little strange. Although he seemed to be absent-minded, his cheeks revealed an abnormal blush. His cheeks were covered with sweat. His body seemed to be a little shaky. There was no focus in his eyes at all. Just like that, Haruhito's body swayed and suddenly fell forward. At this moment, there was only one person who managed to react. Noah flashed in front of Haruhito and directly took him into his arms. Noah felt at the moment he caught it. Haruhito's body was frighteningly hot. Haruhito, Miss Haruhito. Jiyoyo, Kurorobi, and Ren were shocked. 16 Knights, on the other hand, frowned and became serious. Hey, it can't be, ignoring 16 Nights' whispers, Noah hugged Hiroi Hikari, whose body was boiling hot, and took out the black contract document as if he had thought of something. Bestowed game name, Demon King's Arena Battle. Participant list, 3999999 Outer Gate and 4000000 Outer Gate Stage. All participants and organizers in the arena area. Designated Game Leader, Sun's Traveler, Stars White Yiksha. Because you can't participate in the battle now, contact is prohibited during the interruption of the game. Organizer's victory condition, successfully defend one of the 4 arenas. Participants' victory condition, successfully defend all 4 arenas. Interruption of the game, 3 days. Before the game restarts, both sides are not allowed to attack each other. Organizer's first prohibition, multiple arena defenders appearing in the same arena. Organizer's second prohibition, injecting the Black Death virus into the participant's body. Participant's first prohibition, leaving the game area, stage area, during the interruption of the game. Participant's second prohibition, leaving the area of free movement during the interruption of the game within 500 square meters of the Fire Dragon's Birth Sacrificial Ceremony headquarters. Participant's third prohibition, when the game restarts, there are more than 4 participants. Participant's fourth prohibition, multiple participants attacking the same arena. Both sides' joint prohibition, before and after the game restarts, there is no investigation of the attackers and defenders. Both sides' joint prohibition, after the game restarts, there is no change in the attackers and defenders. Oath, respecting the above, based on the honor, flag, and authority of the organizer, this game will be held. Grim Grimoire Hamon Seal. After confirming the contents of the contract, Noah's face darkened. I was tricked by the Demon King. Noah directly carried Hiroi Hibaku in a princess carry. I'll send Hiroi Hibaku back to his room. After saying this, Noah carried Hiroi Hibaku back to his room. Everyone reacted and immediately followed. Hiroi Hibaku, who was carried by Noah, was sweating profusely. His face was flushed, and he weakly opened his eyes to look at Noah's serious face. Hiroi Hibaku looked at Noah in a daze. After a while, he murmured as if he was in a dream. Dad. Chapter 13:24. With a soft groan, Hiroi Buyao's consciousness gradually began to awaken. No. To say that he was sober wasn't entirely true. With Hirohibu Yachi's current state, rather than saying that he was awake, it would be more accurate to say that he barely kept his consciousness. His body temperature was terrifyingly high. His head also became sluggish because of the fever. His vision seemed to be covered by a layer of fog. He couldn't see clearly at all. He felt that his body was extremely heavy, and his consciousness wasn't very clear. His body was sticky and uncomfortable. Obviously, he was sweating a lot. In this extremely uncomfortable situation, Hirohibu Yachi felt that even getting up became quite difficult. He could only raise one hand and put it on his burning forehead. With some difficulty in breathing, he murmured in a dreamy voice. What happened? This kind of casual and natural question was answered by another person besides Hirohibu Yachi. You had a fever and suddenly collapsed. Hearing this voice, Hirohibu Yachi was startled at first, then he turned his head and looked to the side. Only then did Hirohibu Yachi realize his current situation. At this time, Hirohibu Yachi was lying on a bed. And beside the bed, Noah was sitting there, like a considerate nurse, using a small knife and smoothly peeling an apple. Seeing this, Hirohibu Yachi tilted his head and said in confusion. Noah? Fortunately, you didn't ask me who I am when you woke up. Otherwise, even I would have panicked. Noah smiled slightly and continued to peel the apple in his hand, letting the apple peel lengthen with gravity. How do you feel? Very bad. Hirohibu Yachi answered honestly. Undoubtedly, his somewhat childish face was full of sweat, and there was an abnormal red flush, but there was a kind of weak feeling that was rarely seen. But, I'm used to lying on the bed, so it's not a big deal. Used to lying on the bed? Noah's hand movement slightly paused, then he recovered as if nothing had happened and said casually. In other words, you often get sick. Haruhibu Yaichi was silent for a while, then slowly said. Not often, but for a long time, my body was sick. In my era, there was no cure for the disease. In the past, I was always sick and could only lie on the hospital bed, and I couldn't even walk. While saying this, Haruhibu Yaichi involuntarily reached out his hand and held the round wooden carving hanging on his neck. His sweaty and flushed face became softer. Later, someone gave me this life catalog, which allowed me to gain the power of friends. I recovered and gradually began to live a normal life. Is that so? Noah looked at Haruhibu Yaichi. The person who gave you this life catalog was your father? Haruhi Hiroyuki looked at Noah in surprise. How did you know? I guessed, Noah said with a teasing smile. After all, when you weren't fully conscious, you called me Dad. Called you father? Haruhibu Yaichi froze on the spot, and when he saw the teasing look on Noah's face, his face became redder. It was because of embarrassment. No matter who it was, anyone would feel embarrassed to call their friend Dad while they were unconscious. In order to get rid of this embarrassment, Haruhibu Yaichi awkwardly changed the topic. Why did I suddenly have a fever? Hearing this, the smile on Noah's face began to disappear, and he gently sighed. Because the Black Death lurking in your body broke out. Black Death? Haruhibu Yaichi was stunned, and the next second, he was stunned. You said, I have the Black Death? Noah nodded, which made Haruhibu Yaichi confused. Why? Haruhibu Yaichi didn't ask why he had the Black Death. For him to suddenly have the Black Death at this time, there could only be one reason. It was the doing of the Demon King who could control the Black Death, Pest. After all, before this, Pest had openly admitted that she had injected the Black Death into the bodies of all the participants. If Haruhibu Yaichi had the Black Death, it could only be Pest's doing. However, when the rules of the game were rewritten, Noah had clearly requested for the other party to retrieve the Black Death virus. The contract also clearly stated that the organizer was prohibited from injecting the Black Death virus into the participants, wasn't it? Since that was the case, why would the Black Death appear? As if he had seen through the doubts in Haruhibu Yaichi's heart, Noah smacked his lips. That spotted loli is playing a word game with us. Noah took out the contract and handed it to Haruhibu Yaichi. Take a careful look at this contract. Haruhibu Yaichi obediently received the contract and began to carefully read it. Bestowed game name, Demon King's Arena Battle. Participant list, 3999999 Outer Sect and 4000000 Outer Sect Boundary Wall Stage Area. Community of all participants and organizers. Designated game leader by the participants, Sun's Traveler, Stars White Yiksha. As they are currently unable to participate in the battle, contact with them is prohibited during the interruption of the game. Victory condition for the host, successfully defend one of the 4 arenas. Victory condition for the participants, successfully seize all 4 arenas. Interruption of the game, 3 days. Before the game restarts, both parties are not allowed to attack each other. First prohibition for the host, multiple arena defenders appearing in the same arena. Second prohibition for the host, injecting the Black Death virus into the participants' bodies. First prohibition for the host, leaving the game area, stage area, during the interruption of the game. Second prohibition for the host, leaving the range of free movement during the interruption of the game. The range is limited to 500 square meters around the headquarters of the Fire Dragon Birth Sacrificial Ceremony. Third prohibition for the host, when the game restarts, more than 4 participants will appear. Fourth prohibition for the host, multiple participants appearing in the same arena. First prohibition for both parties, before and after the game restarts, investigating the attackers and defenders of the arena. First prohibition for both parties, after the game restarts, changing the attackers and defenders of the arena. Oath, respecting the above, based on the honor, flag, and authority of the host, the bestowed game will be held. Grim Grimoire Hamon, seal. Looking at the contract several times, Hiroi Sabaki couldn't find any problems with it, so he looked at Noah with suspicion. The contract clearly states that the host is prohibited from injecting the Black Death virus into the participants' bodies. The contract does state that the host is prohibited from injecting the Black Death virus into the participants' bodies. Noah reminded him. But, it doesn't state that the host is allowed to recover the Black Death virus that was previously injected into the participants' bodies, right? After being reminded by Noah, Hiroi Hibikushi was immediately enlightened. That's right. The contract did not state that the host was allowed to recover the Black Death virus that was previously injected into the participants' bodies. In other words, the Black Death virus that Pest injected into the participants' bodies was not recovered. She merely stopped spreading the Black Death virus. After understanding that, Hiroi Hibikushi puffed up his cheeks. Have we been deceived? Not exactly deceived. After all, we didn't specifically state when the host is allowed to recover the Black Death virus. Noah narrowed his eyes. That's why the host is taking advantage of this loophole and deliberately delaying the recovery time. If one of our main players were to fall down due to the Black Death virus during the game's interruption and be unable to participate in the competition, the host would have profited, no? In the end, I became the one to fall down. Hiroi Hibikushi became somewhat depressed. In other words, I won't be able to participate in the competition, right? There's nothing you can do about it. Noah extended his hand and gently patted Hiroi Hibikushi's head. This time, you should properly rest and leave the competition to us. Seeing Noah gently patting his head, Hiroi Hibikushi's beautiful face blushed. However, he obediently nodded his head and chose to obey. Chapter 1325. After that, Noah chatted with Hiroi Hataki for a while and fed him a peeled apple. When Hiroi Hataki was tired, Noah took care of the girl and laid her down before walking out of the room. Just as he walked out of the room, Jio-yuki, who had a pointy hat on her shoulder, walked over from the other end of the corridor. Seeing Noah come out of Hiroi's room, Jio-yuki quickened her pace and came in front of Noah. How is Hiroi's condition? Can you say that she's fine? Noah bitterly smiled. That girl is infected with the Black Death. If it's dragged on for too long, she will die. As one of the most terrifying plagues in human history, the Black Death was still feared even now. It was a synonym for the Grim Reaper. After all, the Black Death was contagious. Because of the outbreak of the Black Death, Mandela even directly ordered that the surroundings of Hiroi's room be completely isolated, forbidding anyone from Salamandra to freely enter or leave. Only the members of No Name were allowed to pass. Under such circumstances, the only ones who could take care of Hiroi were the members of No Name. I already asked Letitia to stay behind and take care of Hiroi. Noah could only say so. So, for the time being, we can be at ease. Is it only temporary? Jio-yuki worriedly asked. Could it be that even you don't have a way to cure Hiroi's illness? No way. Noah directly surrendered. If it's an injury, no matter how serious it is, I have a way to heal Hiroi in a short period of time. Even if she loses an arm or a leg, I have a way to heal her. But when it comes to illness, I really can't do anything. Noah's collection in the Gate of Babylon mainly came from two worlds. One was the world of the Shape Moon. The other was the world of the game. The collection in the M-shaped moon world was mainly prepared by Gaia and Alea. There were all kinds of legendary items that could exist in the form of weapons and tools. There were even gold, silver, and treasures. There was also an unlimited supply of consumables. Unfortunately, there were no medical props in this room. No matter what, curing a disease required a specific dose of medicine. No matter how far science had come, there had never been a medicine that could cure all diseases. Otherwise, there would be no point for the rest of the medicines to exist. Under such circumstances, Gaia and Alea had no way of preparing medicine for Noah to treat his illness. After all, with Tungtung's self-control, he couldn't possibly go out of his way to get some cold medicine and stuff it into Noah's treasure trove just because of a small cold, right? Needless to say, the items in the game were even more valuable. At the very least, Noah had heard of a weakened status in the game, and a poisoned status in the game, but he had never heard of a sick status in the game. Naturally, none of the items in the game could be used to recover his condition. If Noah had a way to cure Haruhabu Yai-Chi, there were only two ways. The first was to use the shaman incarnation to give Haruhabu Yai-Chi the power of protection, increasing his resistance to the disease and eliminating the Black Death. The second was to simply let Haruhabu Yai-Chi die of the disease, and then use a resurrection item to revive him. Of these two methods, the first one could only be used after Haruhabu Yai-Chi died, so there was no point in using it now. The second one was to use the shaman incarnation to give Haruhabu Yai-Chi the power of protection, which could only be done through mouth to mouth. If he mentioned this to Jiu Yuanfei, he would probably be beaten to death by this conservative woman from the Showa era. Jiu Yuanfei, who didn't know what Noah was thinking, could only sigh and reveal a firm expression. So you're saying that if I want to save Haruhabu Yai-Chi, I have to defeat the Demon King controlling the Black Death? Well, that's how it is. Noah said half-heartedly. However, that's my mission. Milady, you just have to think about how to deal with the others. Your mission? Jiu Yuanfei was confused. How is it your mission? You might not necessarily encounter that demon king called Pest, right? It must be known that in this game, regardless of whether it was the host or the participants, it was forbidden to investigate who was attacking the arena or defending the arena before and after the start of the game. In other words, Noah was not allowed to send people to investigate who would be defending which arena on Pest's side. Pest was also not allowed to send people to investigate who would be attacking which arena on Noah's side. Everything was done randomly. If Noah wanted to fight against Pest, he would have to choose the fighting ring that Pest was in charge of guarding. The probability of this was only 1 in 4. It was very hard to say what the result would be. Noah would end up fighting against Pest. If that was the case, it wouldn't be Noah's mission, right? You don't have to worry about that. Noah shrugged. Then, he looked at Jiu Yuanfei. You, on the other hand, will you be fine? Emin? Jiu Yuanfei raised her brows and said arrogantly. You think I'll have a problem? Had it been before, not to mention Pest, Jiu Yuanfei would not even be able to deal with demons like Vasil, Lading and Strom. A demon who had the merit of causing the death of 130 children was much more powerful than a first-rate existence like Jard. In the past, Jiu Yuanfei did not have enough understanding of her own grace and could only place her simulated godhead in another person's body so that those with a lower level of spirit would submit to her. Jiu Yuanfei would not be able to defeat those demons. But now, Jiu Yuanfei clearly understood what her own grace was. As long as she provided Jiu Yuanfei with sufficient grace, with Jiu Yuanfei's exceptional ability, she would become extremely terrifying. Ignoring everything else, Black Rabbit had once said that if Jiu Yuanfei was provided with 3 or 4 relatively powerful grace, then with Jiu Yuanfei's ability, it might even be possible for her to increase her grace to 4 digits. Unfortunately, powerful grace was not something that could be obtained just because one wanted to. Not everyone could be like Noah, who had the backing of 2 restraints and a treasure trove of mythical-level treasures. It was precisely because of this that Noah was not as confident as Jiu Yuanfei. Indeed, your grace ability is against the rules. As long as you have sufficient grace to exhaust, even Black Rabbit would have to worry if she would fall into your trap, right? Noah reminded. However, that's only if you have the grace. If you use up all the grace in your hands before you achieve victory, then you will definitely lose. Jiu Yuanfei was immediately speechless. Indeed, this was a weakness that Jiu Yuanfei had to pay attention to. Ancient flying birds' blessings were all very ordinary blessings. After being bestowed with the simulated godhead and increasing the power of the spirit, the lifespan of the grace would be greatly reduced, and they would become consumables. At that time, once Jiu Yuanfei used up all her grace, even people like Jard might not be able to defeat her. Furthermore, Jiu Yuanfei's physical ability was only at the level of an ordinary person. As soon as an enemy got close to her, she would lose her ability to fight in one hit. Unless you're bestowed with the simulated godhead and increasing the power of the spirit, you'll be able to withstand the powerful grace and protect yourself. Noah looked at Jiu Yuanfei seriously. I can help you with this, but it depends on whether you're willing to do it. Jiu Yuanfei fell silent. After a while, Jiu Yuanfei lifted her head and seemed to have made a decision. I understand what you're saying, but I don't want to rely on others to pave the way for me. Otherwise, it would be meaningless for me to leave everything in the original world and come to this world. Jiu Yuanfei extended her hand and touched the elf with the pointy hat on her shoulder. Don't worry, I'll be able to get the powerful grace. However, I'll have to ask this child to help me. Her. Noah looked at the elf with the pointy hat in a daze. The elf with the pointy hat who was standing on Jiu Yuanfei's shoulder seemed to be dancing happily. Blessing of power, seeing this, Noah, who did not understand, could only choose to trust Jiu Yuanfei. Just like that, the time for the battle with the Demon King was getting closer and closer. Chapter 13:26. Most of the artworks displayed at the fire dragon's birth ceremony were placed in a large empty space. It was a tunnel, and there were squares dug out on both sides of the wall. They looked like exhibition cabinets, and many artworks were placed in the large empty space. In this large empty space, there were many beautiful lanterns, candlesticks, and stained glass. There were also some specially made gifts that were used in daily life and even in battle. They had great artistic value. It was said that there were also some ancient gifts that were held by famous Shura gods since the beginning of Hakuda's construction. No matter how one looked at it, they were the rarest of the rare existences. However, such a rare gift naturally couldn't be displayed in a large empty space at any time and place. Therefore, after the Demon King's attack, those gifts were protected by Salamandra and moved out of this large empty space. Because of this, Lading, who had been enjoying the beautiful lanterns, candlesticks, and stained glass in the large empty space in the center of the exhibition hall, spoke with some regret. It's so beautiful. Even these ordinary things can be made so beautiful. I really want to see the artworks that existed since the beginning of Hakuda's construction. It's such a pity that Salamandra moved them away. Don't tell me you want to occupy these worthless things too. Witsy said helplessly as he carried the flute that was as thick as a stick. Don't forget, we're not planning to rob these useless things. We're planning to rob talents that can strengthen the community. You're right, Lading said unhappily. But, it's a woman's nature to be moved by beautiful things. Witsy, don't you understand that? Unfortunately, I'm not interested in women's interests. Witsy scratched his head. If I have the time, I'd rather take revenge on that kid who punched me. What? Do men only know how to fight and kill? You're so annoying. Lading was like a little girl who loved to look beautiful. She put on an innocent and naive attitude. Can't you be a little more ambitious? I mean, we're demons. Witsy sighed. As demons, aren't we supposed to pursue killing? That's why I don't like that old demon style. Lading threw her gaze to the side as if she was throwing a tantrum. That's what Master thinks too, right? Pest, who was wearing a dress with black and white spots on it, sat on a rock. She did not even look in Lading's direction as she spoke with a monotonous voice and an expressionless face. I'm not interested. Sigh, Lutting lowered her head as if she had received a blow. I thought that since we're both women, Master would have the same opinion as me. Before that, I still have things that I must do, Pest spoke in a somewhat cold and indifferent manner. I don't have time to pay attention to these boring things. Hearing Pest's words, Will and Lading immediately looked to one another. Then, they both turned their gazes to Pest. I say, Master, Will asked tentatively. Are you worried about tomorrow's game of grace? Hearing those words, Pest finally turned her head around and looked at Will. Did you think that I would lose my confidence as the Demon King because of a mere human? Pest's tone was still as calm and cold as ever. However, Will and Ladding were able to keenly sense that Pest's heart was filled with displeasure. Furthermore, Pest's words had exposed her inner thoughts. Undoubtedly, neither Will nor Ladding mentioned a human. They had only mentioned tomorrow's game. Thus, Will and Ladding both understood what was going on. Exactly who was the human Pest was referring to? That guy is truly infuriating, Ladding raised her eyebrows. Looking at how confident he is of us, who does he think he is? Truth be told, that guy is indeed not simple, Will calmly analyzed. Not only did he crack our game so easily, but he also took the initiative of the entire situation into his own hands. He even made Master change the game on a large scale. Just this degree of control over the game is already quite impressive. What's so amazing about him? Isn't it just that he knows how to use his brain a bit? Ladding was unwilling to admit defeat. A man like him who only knows how to talk big will definitely not be able to do anything on the battlefield. That would best be the case, Will started to frown. However, that is not realistic. No matter what, when the game had just started, that guy and that arrogant brat had caught us off guard. We didn't even notice them approaching us. Ladding was immediately speechless. Then, she began to refuse to admit defeat. Even if we cannot defeat them, with Master here, there will be no problem at all. In this game of blessings, Pest, Will, Ladding, and Shoutram's group of 4 were each required to defend an arena and allow the other 4 competitors to attack them. Even if Will, Ladding and Strom were to lose, as long as Pest was able to defend her stage, it would be considered Grim Grimoire Home's victory. For Grim Grimoire Home, in this game, they still held the advantage. Besides, Master did not immediately recall the Black Death virus that was spread out. Right now, some people with weaker immune systems must have fallen, right? Ladding snickered in a somewhat mischievous manner. If that man were to fall as well, he would truly deserve it. Unfortunately, he also said that he would not be affected by the Black Death virus. Will poured cold water on Ladding's words. Don't be so stubborn. Although the situation seems to be in our favor, that's because we have Master, the Demon King with a 5-digit number. Other than Master, do you think you and I can guarantee that we'll be able to defend the ring? The smile on Ladding's face slowly disappeared. She sank into silence. It must be said that this game had already gone out of control. Not only were the puzzles of the game solved, the content of the game was also greatly changed. Even the enemies that they thought would be fine after sealing White Yiksha suddenly had a bunch of powerful helpers. 16 knights, who sent Will flying with a single punch right from the start. Jiuyuan Flying Bird, who had been hiding a trump card when he was attacked by rats. Hiroi Hikari, who was able to use the favor of phantom beasts and talk to animals. Lastly, the unfathomable Noah, who solved the puzzles in an extremely short amount of time and exposed the true identities of everyone, completely changing the content of the game. Frankly speaking, Will and Ladding were no longer like they were in the beginning. They no longer thought that they could effortlessly win this game. Undoubtedly, the Demon King had used his authority as the organizer to force others to participate in this game of favor. For the Demon King's side, this was an absolute advantage. However, the outcome had turned out like this. Who wouldn't be worried at all? At the very least, Will and Ladding were unable to do so. Right at that moment, Pest suddenly spoke. I will defeat that man called Noah. Will and Ladding were startled at the same time. Master, Ladding cautiously said. The opponent is randomly selected in the game. Even if that man appears, the chances of him facing you is only 1 in 4, right? However, faced with this question, Pest merely replied with a calm expression. Although that is the case, I have a feeling that my opponent will definitely be that man. After saying those words, Pest turned her gaze to Will and Ladding. As for the two of you, if you don't have the confidence to win, I will be the one to give you confidence. After saying those words, a black gust of wind blew around Pest. She disappeared within the black gust of wind. The whistling black gust of wind suddenly undulated and appeared before Will. Pest, who appeared from the black gust of wind, was floating in midair. She extended a hand and placed it on Will's head. Incarnation of Will River, I will now bestow you with the divine spark and allow you to become a true demon god. Chapter 13:27. When the sky regained its brightness once again, the gentle sunlight that descended from the sky caused the huge reflection of the boundary wall to expand continuously on the ground. A dense and heavy atmosphere spread throughout the entire 4 million outer sect area. 3 days ago, this place was very lively because of the fire dragon's birth ceremony held by the eastern and northern districts. But now, 3 days later, it was as if this place had lost its vitality. There was not a single person to be seen. But that was only natural. After encountering the disaster of the box court, as an ordinary citizen, it was very difficult for them to continue living leisurely here. Under the arrangement of Salamandra, the ordinary citizens had already gone to seek refuge. The only ones left were those who belonged to the various communities that were bound by the rules of the gift game and were unable to leave the designated activity area. And those communities were all gathered in the operation headquarters of the Fire Dragon's birth ceremony. Only 5 people came out of the Fire Dragon's birth ceremony. Noah. 16 Knights. Ancient Bird. Sandora. And as the referee, Black Rabbit, who had to personally witness the outcome of this gift game and preside over the overall situation until the end. Other than these 5 people, everyone else stayed in the operation headquarters of the Fire Dragon's birth ceremony. It wasn't because the others didn't want to move with Noah and the others. But when Sandora announced the 4 contestants in front of everyone, other than Black Rabbit, who was the referee, everyone else was bound by the contract and couldn't leave the operation headquarters. Well, that's to be expected, right? Reverse 16 Knights tugged at his collar a little roughly as he curled his lips into a smile. If we don't restrict the actions of others, then when we fight with the organizers, others can easily interfere from the side. That doesn't comply with the 3rd restriction of the contestants. When the game restarts, only 4 contestants can appear. Yes. Black Rabbit nodded heavily, his expression was unprecedentedly serious. The game will restart soon. Black Rabbit's rabbit ears have already received the command from the box court central hub. Everyone, please start choosing the arena you want to attack. After saying that, Black Rabbit spread out a map. The map that was spread out was exactly the same as the one that Noah had taken out during the meeting 3 days ago. The only difference was that the locations of the 4 rings were marked with 4 crosses, and they were marked with the symbols of 1, 2, 3, and 4 respectively. Now, the members of the Grim Gimmel family have taken up the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th ring respectively. Hey too raised his head and looked at the crowd. Everyone, please consider carefully which arena number to choose. Once you have chosen, you will not be able to change it. Noah, 16 Knights Reverse, Distant Bird, and Shadora exchanged glances. Then I'll choose arena number 1. Reverse 16 Knights forcefully hammered his fist into his palm. His eyes revealed an unprecedented excitement. I've been waiting for this moment for a long time. Lord Demon King, I hope you can give me enough fun. Then I'll choose the 2nd arena. Jill Fei Niao did not want to be outdone and made a declaration. She held the wine-red gift card tightly in her hand. Let me show my brand new strength on this stage. Seeing how Reverse 16 Knights and Distant Bird had decisively decided which arena to take down without any hesitation, Shadora couldn't help but admire them. The reason why they were so decisive was because Reverse 16 Knights and Distant Bird believed that they would win. They didn't think that they would lose. To put it nicely, this straightforwardness was confidence. To put it bluntly, it was arrogance. Regardless of whether it was confidence or arrogance, Reverse 16 Knights and Distant Bird had displayed it in a way that no one would dislike. This made Shadora, who was somewhat nervous and worried, calm down a lot. Under such circumstances, Noah, who had been observing Shadora's performance, smiled and spoke very casually. In that case, I'll choose arena number 3. Understood. Shadora pulled herself together and said with the most serious expression. Then, please give me arena number 4. I swear in the name of the ruler that I won't submit to the Demon King. After Noah's group of 4 had decided on the arena they would attack, the pitch-black contract document in Black Rabbit's hand flashed with light. The following information was written on it. Gift game name, Demon King's Arena No. 1 Arena Raider, reverse 16 Knights. Raider of Arena number 2, Jiao Fei Niao Arena 3 Raider, Noah Doria Arena 4 Raider, Shadora Turturek. According to the rules of the game, the Raider is not allowed to change the target midway. The defender is also not allowed to change the arena they are defending. Respecting the above content, based on the honor, flag, and authority of the organizer, the gift game will be restarted. After confirming the new content on the contract document, Black Rabbit raised the pitch-black contract document in its hand and declared loudly. Then, the gift game, Demon King's Arena, begins now. The heavy atmosphere that permeated the entire world suddenly exploded. Just as Noah and the others were about to head to the arena, reverse 16 Knights, who accidentally passed by Noah, lowered his voice and left this sentence. I'll let you have the feast this time. If you lose, I won't let you go. Hearing this, Noah was slightly stunned. At this time, reverse 16 Knights had already turned into a black shadow and rushed out. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared. Looking at the direction where reverse 16 Knights disappeared, Noah couldn't help but laugh. I really can't hide from him, east of the outer door area, where arena number 1 was. Reverse 16 Knights, who was mixed with the sound of breaking air, fell from the sky like a cannonball. With a heavy muffled explosion, he landed heavily on the ground. Straightening his body and raising his head, 16 Knights turned his gaze in the direction of the arena. Then, he raised his eyebrows and grinned. Ha! So it's you, a third-rate demon? The person who appeared in the arena was Wei Shi. However, in the face of reverse 16 Knights' provocation, Wei Shi only had a ruthless smile and did not reply. On his body, an almost terrifying aura gradually rose. Sensing the aura, 16 Knights' disdainful expression gradually disappeared as he stared intently at Wei Shi. You seem to have changed, huh? Wei Shi closed his eyes and chuckled. Then, he suddenly opened his eyes. Whether I'm different or not, you'll have to experience it for yourself. As soon as he finished speaking, Wei Shi lowered his body and raised the thick stick-like flute in his hand. His entire body was like a wild cheetah as he charged out amidst the hurricane that shook the air. Compared to before, his speed was simply incomparable. West of the outer door area, where arena number 2 was, Jill Yufei, who was slowly and gracefully walking into the arena area, suddenly stopped and looked in front of her. Oh! La Ting twirled the flute in her hand and laughed out loud. I didn't expect to meet you here. I apologize for not greeting you last time at the exhibition venue. Exhibition venue? Jill Yufei narrowed her eyes and smiled sweetly. So you're the one who manipulated the rats to attack me? That's just a greeting. La Ting smiled leisurely. How is it? Are you satisfied? Satisfied, of course I'm satisfied. Jill Yufei smiled elegantly and raised the gift card in her hand. So, today, let me give you a satisfactory return gift. North of the outer door area, where arena number 3 was located. Before Noah arrived at a place where he could see the ring, he could already sense an extremely strong and dangerous power while hovering in midair. A black wind that seemed to have dyed heaven and earth black kept stirring up like the turbid atmosphere, rushing back and forth. Looking at the gale that completely dyed his field of vision black, Noah's eyes flashed with a gleam. You're tuning in to the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.